The autumnal hush that greeted dusk in the Wolfswood fell like a shroud across the clearing, amber leaves twirling in contemplative spirals, before coming to rest among a scatter of wolf prints. Lyanna Stark reined in her dusky mare at the wood's edge, the horse's breath pluming silver in the chill air. For the span of a heartbeat, the weary hush of the forest felt like an embrace, welcome but fugitive, before the distant clang of Winterfell's forge bell tolled, pulling her back into the ceaseless gravity of duty. In her mind's eye she saw her brothers, each locked in their own orbit around the ancient heart tree that had witnessed every Stark vow since the Dawn Age, and she let guilt prickle. Their faces were never absent from her thoughts these days, Brandon's reckless smile now frozen in memory, Eddard's quiet stoicism weighed down by a realm's debt of grief. Tonight she meant to carve lines in fate that even the gods could not ignore. Cold light fled across the sky as the last wedge of sun vanished behind the western hills. Lyanna swung down from her saddle, feeling the earth's frost-nibbled firmness under her boots, and tethered her mare beside a brook where sluggish water mirrored pale starlight. 4 months ago, word had reached Winterfell that Queen Cersei Lannister, widow of King Robert Baratheon, had bent the court to her will with coin, cunning, and the promise of blood wine for any who opposed her. Rumor perched on every raven's wing that the Iron Throne had sharpened its spines, that the Queen's golden hair seemed spun from sunlight yet hid a heart for which mercy was merely a child's tale. Lyanna had listened in silence, while her lord brother read each letter aloud, her fingers curling in her lap until nails bit flesh. And for 4 months, she had dwelled in a restless half-night, hearing the whispers grow, until they filled the halls like wind in a cracked keep, until she could no longer ignore what they demanded. The Godswood lay a quarter-mile off, its sentinel pines looming black against the dusk. She moved along a hunter's trail once known only to herself, and Benjen, the pine needle path, soft underfoot. Long ago the two had raced here to see who might be first to stand atop the King's Road milestone by moonrise. Benjen forever trailing, because she took every corner reckless as a wolf at scent, heedless of branch or briar. Tonight she walked that same trail, as if stepping through the past toward a future still unwritten. Snowdrop blooms, last of the season, glimmered between tree roots like timid ghosts. She knelt and gathered one, tucking the fragile stem into her braid. If the old gods watched, let them see she bore both winter's chill and its promise. Not until she reached the Godswood clearing did she sense another presence. A hooded figure stood with his back to her at the heart tree, gloved hand pressed to the bleeding face carved in the white trunk. The stranger's stillness was priest-like, yet the tilt of his shoulders spoke of restless strength caged within. Lyanna set her hand on the pommel of her sword. Icy's daughter, smaller cousin to her father's great blade forged from Harrenhal steel. The hooded figure spoke without turning, his voice rough as gravel under snow. "The hour is late to tempt the gods' attention, my lady." Recognition flickered. She would know that low northern cadence if heard across storm or battlefield. "Corin," she murmured, letting her hand fall from the hilt. Corin Halfhand had ridden south from the Shadow Tower at her summons, leaving wildling border tensions to lesser rangers. That he stood here now, before any council of Stark bannermen, underscored how grave her design truly was. The ranger slipped back his hood, revealing weather-carved features and hair streaked with frost. Scars latticed his cheek, each earned where blade met purpose. He bowed his head fractionally, formality from a man who seldom bothered with courts. "Your message spoke of war." "Not war," she answered, stepping closer until the wet soil darkened her boots. "A duel." She looked up at the weeping eyes of the heart tree, crimson sap oozing slowly from the carved sockets like tears too old to sting. Steel against steel, queen against queen. A crow caught overhead, wings thrumming as it flitted from pine to pine. Corin's eyes narrowed. Cersei Lannister sits a throne smelted of Oathbreaker's blades and dragonfire. How do you propose to drag her into single combat when she commands legions? Lyanna inhaled the Godswood's ancient scent. Pine resin, moss, damp earth thick with stories. The Iron Throne's legitimacy wavers. The Riverlands bristle. The Stormlords grumble beneath the weight of Lannister debts. She holds power by fear and spectacle. So let spectacle unmake her. Challenge her before the lords of the realm, beneath the eyes of gods new and old. Invoke the oldest rite known to the first men, Hom Ganga. If the queen declines, she shows her cowardice. If she accepts, she loses the protection of her court. Then a hush fell, broken only by the sigh of distant wind sliding through pine needles. Corin circled the heart tree as though measuring the gravity of her intent in each slow footstep. He touched the gnarled bark, then spoke quietly. The realm is a tinderbox. One spark, one blade, may send it ablaze. Are you prepared to bear the ashes if the wind turns ill? I'm prepared, she said, though the magnitude of that readiness felt like cold iron in her belly. She imagined her brothers' faces once more. Eddard's gaze would be pained but steadfast. He understood the weight of honor better than any living man. Yet he would counsel caution, the treaty, the letter over the sword. Brandon would roar approval, brandishing his own blade and bragging at the Elatable before dawn. Benjen would frown, fearful she risked everything for a song half remembered. But this was not about songs. It was about putting an end to usurpers' tales begun in the hush of a tower long ago, when a crown of dark petals had lain abandoned beside a bedside, stained with blood. Corin studied her, then nodded. You will need allies bold enough to ride south to stand behind your claim. The north is loyal, but isolated. The Vale might be swayed if you can pierce Lord Aaron's grief. The Riverlands bleed beneath Lannister levies. They too may hunger for a stark banner flown against red and gold. She felt a surge of relief that he spoke not of dissuasion, but of strategy. I leave at dawn, she said. I ride first to White Harbor. Lord Manderley owes the Starks more than harbor fees. He will grant me ships arrayed like silver wolves. From there to Gulltown, and the Eyrie beyond. Each lord I convince will weigh heavier on Cersei's conscience than 1,000 spears. Nah? And if they refuse? Corin asked. Then I ride on. Her voice was quiet, hard as hoarfrost. Every refusal is proof that fear rules them. But some hearts cannot be stilled by fear. They will answer strength. Above, the moon coaxed steel-gray light across the glade. Lyanna unsheathed Ice's daughter, its edge catching the moon's ghostly gleam. She drove the tip into moist earth at the heart tree's roots, knelt, and pressed her palm to the flat of the blade. Old gods, hear me. I claim the right of duel as first men have since the pact. I will face the Lion Queen beneath the eyes of gods and men. If I falter, let Winterfell stones forget my name. But if I prevail, let the realm recall who guarded the pact when dragons slept and lions roared too loudly. The rasp of steel sliding free as she withdrew the sword felt like a promise honored. Corin watched in silence, then lowered his head. I will gather men I trust. Spears that fear neither gold nor Southron songs. When you ride, they will ride. Mentor. A hush settled again, deeper than before, as if the clearing itself exhaled acceptance. Somewhere far off, a lone direwolf howled, its voice rising in mournful greeting to the crescent moon. Lyanna rose and turned to leave, heart thrumming like a huntsman's drum. The first stone had been cast down the mountainside. Now the avalanche would decide its own path. She slept poorly that night, though the feather mattress and furs were familiar as breath. Dreams came jagged and luminous. Cersei Lannister seated upon a throne that wept molten gold, her green eyes bright with malice. Lyanna's own reflection caught in a goblet, distorted by ripples of blood-red wine. The wolf and the lion circling in snow while ravens wheeled overhead, their cries spelling words she could almost read. She woke before dawn, heart hammering, and rose to dress in wolf-gray riding leathers, binding her hair in a single warrior's braid. She belted on Ice's daughter, kissed the blade's cold surface, and descended the tower stair without rousing her maids. Stables smelled of hay and warm horse musk. Jonquil, the dusky mare, whickered softly as though privy to secret destiny. Lyanna stroked the mare's neck, whispered of long roads and uncertain seas, then tightened the saddle cinch. Outside, night clung to the courtyard like damp wool, torches sputtering in the wind. She mounted and nudged Jonquil into motion. Gate wards opened with slow groans. the watchman saluting her silhouette unknowingly as it slipped into the dark. South of Winterfell, the King's Road lay white with frost, stretching away between towering oaks and flinty hills. She guided Jonquil to the packed center of the track, breath pluming ahead in soft clouds. Dawn bled into the sky like ink spilled across pale parchment, gilding every branch tip and stone wall. Each mile carried her farther from home's familiar hearth smoke, deeper into realm-wide intrigue, yet her conviction only sharpened. Rumor that a Stark rode south would scatter by raven flight long before she reached White Harbor. That too was design. Let the Iron Throne tremble with anticipation. By nightfall she reached Barrowton, its low walls half shrouded in the barrow mists that pooled around ancient tombs. Lady Barbary Risewell greeted her at the gatehouse, dark hair blowing wild, gray eyes shining with surprise and something fiercer. Hope's ember long banked. They supped beneath timber rafters hung with dusty banners. Over spiced boar and sour Dornish red, Lyanna outlined her intent while the hall's candles hissed in the draught. Barbary listened, one brow arched, then laughed, a sound like iron striking flint. A duel for crowns. I would ride half the length of Westeros to watch Cersei's face when her gilded knights of the King's Guard must step aside and let a wolf sink teeth into her pride. She rose, raised her goblet. To Lyanna Stark, rightful queen of winter and whispers. Around them retainers thumped fists on oaken tables. Lyanna drank, tasting wine and the sharp tang of beginning. At dawn Barbary sent 80 riders to escort her to White Harbor, all clad in ash-gray cloaks bearing the running horse of House Riswell. Their presence turned heads along every village they passed, tongues wagging faster than ravens could fly. And when at last the silver spires of White Harbor's Sea-Watch Tower glittered in the slanted afternoon sun, Lyanna felt the weight of witness pressing upon her shoulders like a mantle she had sought her whole life without knowing its name. Lord Wyman manderly awaited at the quayside, his broad frame swaddled in layers of plush velvet, laughter lines creasing his cheeks, though his eyes sparked with calculation. The sea wind riffled his beard, scenting the air with salt and harbor tar. "Lady Lyanna," he boomed, descending marble steps with surprising agility. "We heard the wolf had slipped her den. Come, come, the merman's court is at your disposal." Above, gulls wheeled over lines of ships swaying gently, their sails furled like slumbering wings. Her gaze lingered on the largest, a carrack of pale wood and silvered ironwork, named Maiden's Song. She imagined her banner unfurled at its mast, gray direwolf snapping in a briny gale, and felt the tug of the world's wide waters calling. In the echoing hall of the Merman's Court, she spoke before assembled captains and port reeves. She offered no florid rhetoric, only the stark truth. Sovereignty could no longer be measured by the rubies on a crown forged in defeat. Kingship must answer the blade's impartial verdict. Faces turned toward one another as murmurs grew. Some saw folly, a girl who believed ancient rights might leash a lion. Others saw deliverance from Lannister tribute racks. At length Lord Wyman rose, his girth shifting the bench. Winter once spared White Harbor in grateful remembrance of old oaths. Today, we return the favor. He gestured to the harbor beyond the colonnade. 3 ships of war, 30 sailors each, captains loyal to Stark honor above all. They sail with the evening tide. Lyanna bowed, not as a supplicant to a greater power, but as one equal warrior saluting another. She would remember the old lord's generosity if ever the gods allowed her victory. That night she lay in a cabin aboard Maiden's Song, the rhythmic slap of waves against hull lulling her senses. Moonlight streamed through the porthole, painting shifting ripples across her bunk. Above deck, rigging creaked, and sailors sang low to keep time with their tasks. Lyanna pressed palm to the wood plank above her heart, feeling the vessel's slow breathing. Somewhere behind in the black northern sea, Winterfell's lights dwindled like memories. Ahead awaited storms both literal and politic. Yet this hush, this between-time lull, felt sacred, an antechamber to destiny's great hall. 3 days later the narrow claws of Gultan's wharf reached to greet them. Stevedore stared as she disembarked in stark gray, flanked by Risewell riders and White Harbor sailors. News had flown ahead. The Wolf's daughter comes south to challenge the Lioness. The Eyrie perched high in cloud-wreathed crags beyond, and within its airy walls, Lady Lysa, Arryn ruled by fear, disguised as frailty. Lyanna meant to scale the giant's lance regardless. She left her escort in Gulltown to gather supplies, and took only Corrin and a pick of 7 riders most steady on ice-slick mountain trails. The ascent to the Eyrie was a tapestry of peril. Narrow ledges dusted with frost, mule paths where a misset hoof might plunge 2,000 feet, yet the world's raw beauty thrummed around them. Granite spires piercing mist, waterfalls tumbling in silver ribbons. They reached the snow-kissed perch of the Bloody Gate at dusk on the second day. Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish himself, greeted them clad in worn mail that gleamed like river rock. Lyanna's breath caught at the sight. This man had fought beside her father in days when dragons were but statues. He swept off his helm, revealing hair gone winter gray around eyes still bright as sunlit trout scales. "Lady Lyanna, Docting, your father's spirit walks beside you." His words were both greeting and mourning. She clasped his forearm, feeling the corded strength that belied his years. "Sir Brynden, I come to petition the Eyrie, but my cause demands more than safe lodging. Will the Vale stand silent while lions feast?" He studied her, the proud lift of her chin, the resolve etched into every line. Then he smiled, slow and sure. "Come inside, child. We shall see how echoes stir in these halls." Amen. Up the dangerous turns and narrow stone staircases they climbed, past sky cells where criminals gazed in terror at the clouds drifting beneath their feet, until at last she entered the Eyrie's high hall. Blue-vined moonlight streamed through arched windows, casting wavering patterns on the marble floor. Lady Lysa sat upon a weirwood inlaid chair. Her son perched listless at her side, small fingers tracing imaginary knights in the air. The boy looked up, interest flickering. "Is that the Wolf Princess, Mother?" Lyanna knelt on one knee. "Only Lyanna, my lord." Lysa's eyes, pale and darting, swept across Lyanna and her rough-clad rangers. "Why bring steel and frost to my gentle vale?" "To break the Lannister yoke," Lyanna said, voice steady. "I seek recognition of trial by single combat for the throne itself. As regent of the Vale, you hold an ancient seat at the Eyrie and a vote on any great council. My claim cannot stand without ears willing to hear." Lysa's mouth pinched. "Great councils breed war, dear lady. My Vale is peaceful. My son is my world." "One. So shall war come to your world," Lyanna replied softly, "in crimson banners and golden lions, if no realm checks the Queen's ambition. You can greet that war on your own doorstep or beside allies who know winter intimately." The hall's still air seemed to flex as tension dissolved into silence. Then a voice rasped from the periphery. "Lord Jon Royce, bronze armor glimmering like antique sunrise. The Starks aided the Vale during the War of the Usurper. Steel repays steel." He pounded a mailed fist over his heart, his ruined armor ringing like temple bells. "Bronze Jon stands with the Wolf Maid." A murmur of assent rippled among knights standing behind pillars, their sigils reflecting glints of torchlight. Lysa paled, eyes darting between them and her son. The child's small voice cut through. "If Lady Lyanna wins, will there be lemon cakes?" The hall echoed with uneasy laughter. Lysa exhaled sharply, perhaps sensing the tide. She gave a velvet soft nod. "The Vale will not oppose your petition. The Eyrie offers safe passage and audience with my lords. No more." Lyanna bowed, accepting. She knew victory might be measured in inches until the moment steel crossed. Days stretched into a mosaic of councils and quiet rides. Ravens flew from the Eyrie's rookery bearing parchments, sealed with the direwolf sigil, spreading word of the duel to every great house. Somewhere in the shadows of King's Landing's alleys, such letters would reach ears eager to count the coins a public spectacle might spin. And always she felt Cersei's distant gaze, as though the Queen's green eyes could pierce leagues of sky and stone to study her. When at last Lyanna stood upon the deck of a Vale galley bound south past Dragonstow's dormant volcanic crown, the wind tasted warmer, thick with salt, and the promise of summer storms. She looked aft to the vanishing cliffs and realized each mile now risked crossing into enemy waters. Spy cogs under Lannister pay might track her progress. Assassins might slip aboard at the next harbor. Yet the thought only hardened her resolve like tempering steel. Night fell. She leaned on the rail, listening to white-capped waves slap the hull in ceaseless lullaby. In her hand, she rolled a silver coin minted with her father's visage, one of few keepsakes carried. She flipped it, watched moonlight gleam along its edge, and caught it again, as though the coin's rise and fall echoed the simple law of fates. Rise to choose, fall to accept. Below deck, Corran sharpened blades among the rangers, their murmur quiet as wind between reeds. He would not speak of fear, but she knew it haunted each of them. Fear not of dying, but of failing her before Steele's verdict. She tucked the coin away and descended to join them, her entrance turning heads. She spoke no rousing oath, merely sat and drew Ice's daughter across her lap. The rasp of her whetstone upon the sword's edge soon joined theirs in measured rhythm. A wordless vow hammered in iron. Beyond the horizon, King's Landing simmered like a cauldron. Gold cloaks patrolled streets where whispers of a northern challenger spread. Nobles wagered in smoky cellar taverns on whether the lioness would deign to stain her silk sleeves with sweat. In the Red Keep's solar, Cersei Lannister stood before a mirror of polished obsidian, green eyes narrowed at her own reflection. Her white gown clung to sleek lines. A jeweled lion circled her throat. Behind her, Ser Jaime's shadow stirred, torn between warning and worship. She dismissed him with a flick, then traced one bold finger down the mirror's smooth face. "Let her come," she whispered. "Let the wolf girl bare her teeth." The court thrummed with speculation. Pycelle huffed about precedent, quills scratching across parchment. The High Septon prayed loudly for kingly lineages preserved. The small folk gawked at stories, their imaginations already painting duels on the dusty cobblestones of the dragon pit. Cersei's lips curled. She knew how to harness spectacle. A duel offered chance not merely to kill but to humiliate, to make the North kneel without armies. She would accept the challenge, not in shadowed courtyard, but upon the cracked flagstones of the dragon pit. Once cradle to royal dragons. There, beneath broken arches open to sky, she would let Westeros witness the breaking of stark resolve. Ravens carried acceptance north and east by dawn. On the Vale Galley's deck, Lyanna unfurled the Queen's seal, crimson wax bearing lion in profile. Lines in sweeping Lannister script glittered where ink had barely dried. The duel set in 8 nights' time beneath the dragon pit's ruin, to be judged by the Seven and recorded for all posterity. She folded it, felt the heat of battle ignite within her veins. 8 nights. Enough for the realm to hold its breath. In the galleys behind hers sailed banners of Royce and Blackfish Tully, of Manderley Silver Merman, of Ricewell Horse. A modest host, yet within each vessel beat hearts on fire with quiet purpose. Lyanna sensed them, oaths unbreakable as ice. The fleet rounded the point where Blackwater Bay yawned wide, sunlight sparking off waves like shards of polished steel. The Red Keep's towers glinted atop Aegon's high hill, proud and cruel. As her ship cut through the bay's gentle chop, fishermen paused at nets, pointing toward the northern banners whipping atop masts. Word leapt from wharf to market faster than gulls darting after scraps. By the hour's turn, tens of thousands pressed along King's Landing streets, clamoring for confirmation. They would not wait long. As Lyanna disembarked onto the cobbled quay, a hush preceded her. Then the tide of murmurs broke. Wolf Princess, Northern Ghost, Stark Vengeance. Gold cloaks formed barriers, but they too stared. She strode through dockyard smells of seaweed and tar, cloak billowing in the bay wind, Corran and her companions forming a wedge behind. And somewhere high within the Red Keep's walls, Cersei watched from a balcony, wine goblet raised in silent greeting. Sunset bled scarlet across the city, painting roofs and alleyway puddles alike. The northern contingent was housed within the manse of the late Lord Belgrave on the Street of Sisters, neutral ground claimed by royal edict. Stone lions adorned the gates, but their once gilded surfaces were scuffed, the paint chipped. In the courtyard, Lyanna's riders lit torches and banners. She stood alone near a fountain whose dry white marble cracked under time's weight, and considered how close she stood to childhood's fevered dream, a chance to shape history by her own hand. Yet dreams seldom clarified the silence between heartbeats, before steel clashes. That silence, she realized, held the marrow of courage. Night deepened. From the city's shadier quarters rose songs of bawdy speculation, dice rattling, coins clinking. The false bravado of men who would watch violence from a distance and call it glory. In the manse's small library, Lyanna opened a weathered tome on Valyrian swordplay, tracing illustrations of reversed grips and sidelong lunges. Yet even as she read, her mind drifted to the honor of her house. The dire wolf that stood sentinel in winter's snow, fending off darkness. She closed the book. Theory would not carry her blade. Spirit would. 8 nights shrank to 7, then 6. Each dawn she rose before first light, practiced forms in the courtyard until sweat chilled on her skin. Corin corrected her elbow's angle. Blackfish sharpened her footwork. Bronze Jan taught counter-strikes honed on veiled tourney fields. Each dusk she wrote letters to Eddard, sealing them though she doubted they would reach Winterfell before the duel was done. She poured each page full of memory, how the weirwood sap smelled like fresh snow melt, how Benjen's laughter once echoed down the halls. It steadied her. 5 nights remained when spies struck. A servant bearing Dornish wine attempted to slip nightshade into her cup. The man died beneath Corin's blade before the poison reached her lips. The next evening, crossbow bolts hissed through the manse windows. One lodged in the stone, 6 inches above her sleeping pallet. Fear tried to whisper, but she banished it with cold resolve. If treachery grew bold, the lioness felt threatened. That knowledge armored her nerves better than plate. 4 nights left. She donned simple garb and, with Corin beside her, walked veiled through Flea Bottom. The reek of tanneries mingled with fresh-baked bread. They moved among the poor, whose lives shifted with the whims of whichever sigil perched above the Red Keep. She listened to their talk. The price of grain, the cruel glee of Lannister guards, the whispered hope that a northern star might rise. Back at the manse she penned no reply to that hope, but its weight warmed her chest. 3 nights. The High Septon summoned both duelists to the Sept of Baelor for formal sanctification. Beneath towering crystal, Lyanna knelt opposite Cersei across an aisle strewn with perfumed rushes. The queen's silk gown shipped from Mars shimmered like molten sun, her crown ablaze with rubies. Their gazes locked. Lioness and wolf, no words spoken. The Septon murmured prayers. Lyanna heard only the roar of her pulse. When she finally rose, Cersei's painted lips curved just enough to reveal satisfaction. A predator, assured of the kill. Later, in her chambers, Lyanna studied her own reflection in a silvered mirror. She saw not the slender maid of winter nights past, but a woman hewn by necessity. Cersei wielded poise like a rapier, but poise could not parry conviction. Lyanna unclasped her braid, letting dark hair spill over her shoulders, then wove it anew, this time interlacing a thin strip of black leather at the crown. Mourning for Brandon, for father, for those whose quiet sacrifices had smoothed this path. She sheathed Ice's daughter and set it by the bed. Tomorrow would be for meditation, the following day for war. 2 nights. Rain pattered against shutters, humidity thick with the bay's brine. Footsteps echoed outside her door. Corin arriving with a bundle. He unwrapped a suit of mail forged in Winterfell's smithy, rings as fine as spider silk yet strong as iron root. Within the bundle lay pauldrons bearing the direwolf in muted silver. She touched the mail, feeling home in each cool link. Corin set it aside for Dawn's fitting, then lingered, eyes shadowed. When steel meets steel, remember. Lions swipe broad and fast. Let her overreach, draw her in. I will, she whispered. He hesitated, then placed a carved wooden token in her palm. The half-hand sigil he had carried since his first ranging. Return this when victory is yours, he said. One night embraced King's Landing in hush. Torches guttered in the dragon pit's deserted shell as workers hammered temporary fences and erected grandstands for Lord's comfort. The skeleton of Balerion the Black Dread loomed overhead, ribs arching like silent balconies from which dragons long dead might watch. Lyanna stood at the dragon pit's arched entrance during a clandestine midnight inspection, letting the enormity of past and future converge. She stepped across cracked tiles once scorched by dragon flame, imagining how tomorrow's clamor would reverberate in these stones. Cheers, screams, the clash of blades. She closed her eyes, let the quiet soak into bone. By dawn she donned the winter silk mail, buckled pauldrons, drew surcoat of deepest gray. She slid Ice's daughter into its sheath and followed her escort through streets already thrumming with anticipation. People lined rooftops. Flowers rained from balconies. The weight of expectation, fear, hope, an entire realm's collective breath settled upon her shoulders. Yet beneath it all, she felt an inner stillness, the calm eye within the storm. The dragon pit's broad floor lay strewn with fresh sand. Grandstands circled overhead, teeming with banners. Baratheon, Tyrell, Martell, Arryn, Tully, even a lone 9-star cross of House Dane. Atop the highest dais, the Iron Throne had been dragged, spines glinting savage under bright sun, so that the queen might sit above the fray. Cersei appeared, clad in scaled crimson armor that molded to every line, her gilded sword black sun resting across her knees. Erupted from her faction while jeers rose from rival stands. Lyanna strode into the ring of sand, each step deliberate, her gray cloak trailing like gathering storm cloud. The High Septon stepped forward, voice amplified by crystalline echoes. He spoke of divine judgment, trial by 7 aspects. The realm's peace depending upon honor. Lyanna heard his words as distant surf. Her gaze remained fixed upon her opponent. Cersei stood, descending the dais with regal slowness, unsheathing black sun. Sunlight danced on its gold inlaid fuller. They faced each other at arm's length. The Lion Queen inclined her head, lips curling. "You look tired, Wolf. The long road south must be taxing." "Gold is heavy," Lyanna replied, "for those who must carry it alone." Cersei's smile thinned. The Septon raised his hands. "Let blood answer blood. At the command, begin you may." But Cersei slashed before the word left his tongue. The crowd gasped. Lyanna had anticipated the betrayal. She pivoted, Ice's daughter rising to parry. Sparks smote air, the ring of steel shivering up their arm. The duel had begun not with ceremony, but with golden audacity, and now the city roared as though dragons reeled overhead once more. Time narrowed to the boundaries of sand and breath. Lyanna felt every taught lesson surge forth. The narrow riposte taught by Bronze Yohn, the low cut favored by the Blackfish, the patience Corrin preached. Cersei pressed aggressively, sword arcs wide, seeking to overwhelm. Lyanna yielded ground, letting the lion expend fury. Each clang hammered into the cacophony of the dragon pit. The watchers' cries, crows circling high, Iron Throne spines catching light like shards of frozen wildfire. Minutes passed measured only by heartbeats and dust. Lyanna's mail repelled a downward slice aimed at her collarbone. She countered with a backhand cut that scored a shallow gash across Cersei's armored upper arm. The queen hissed, eyes bright with rage. She lunged again, but Lyanna stepped inside the sweep, locked hilts, faces inches apart. Over clashing steel she spoke low. "Your fear smells of summer wine." Cersei snarled, twisted free, driving a mailed knee toward Lyanna's thigh. Pain flashed fire-bright, but Lyanna rolled aside, sand spraying. She regained stance, drew breath steady. Around them, the stands rose in a symphony of opposing chants. Wolf, lion, queen of snow, queen of thorns, voices clashing like banners in contrary wind. And still the duel unfolded. Each movement, a stanza in a bloody poem, neither would yield. Lyanna felt her muscles singing with fatigue, her limbs weighted by mail and dust, yet within she harbored a core of winter's temperate calm. She saw in her mind the Hearttree's bleeding face, Barbry's raised goblet, Lord Wyman's harbor lights, Bran's laughter echoing through long-gone halls. All those moments converged here, reforging her resolve. Cersei's strike slowed fractionally, her arrogance chipped by every failed overpowering blow. Sweat dripped from her brow, golden hair plastered to cheek. The sun climbed, heat beating upon armor. Sand stuck to Lyanna's greaves, where blood trickled from the earlier knee blow. She adjusted grip, feeling Ice's daughter hum, an ally in steel. Then, a miscalculated step. Cersei overextended on a feint toward Lyanna's flank. The wolf saw the opening as clear as new ice. She pivoted inside the queen's guard, blade tracing an upward arc that kissed crimson across Cersei's exposed side, carving through scaled plates. Gasps erupted. Cersei staggered, gloved hand pressing at her waist, where red seeped like spilled wine. Fury twisted her features. She swung wild, a lion wounded but dangerous. Lyanna caught the strike on her crossguard, sparks fanning between them. She pushed inside again, elbow crashing into Cersei's gauntlet, unbalancing the queen. They parted, breath ragged. The High Septon's distant protests could barely pierce the roar. Lyanna's lungs burned, but cold focus doused pain. She knew momentum's tide had shifted. Yet caution whispered. Lions fought fiercest when cornered. Cersei spoke through clenched teeth. "Stark bitch, I will feed your heart to the dogs." "You will try," Lyanna murmured. They circled, boots scrunching sand. Every sense narrowed. Even time itself seemed to hesitate. And as the noon bell tolled far off in some sept, Lyanna felt the wordless presence of thousands leaning forward, waiting for finality's breath. She inhaled, tasted salt and dust. She was the North, wind-bitten, enduring. She was the girl who raced Benjen along secret trails, the woman who bowed before the bleeding heart tree, the challenger who refused to bow again. And she charged. Mark down. Unche. Ta, KK. Dust rose in slow spirals around Lyanna's boots as she vaulted forward, blade leveled like a spear of moon-white ice. For an instant, all color drained from the world, leaving only stark contrasts. The glimmer of sun on metal, the rippled shadow of Balerion's vast ribs overhead, the deliberate lift of Cersei's chin, as though she might stare the charge into stillness. But no sorcery slowed the inevitable. Steel met steel in a shriek that rattled flagstones. Lyanna's opening cut hammered against the flat of black sun, forcing the lioness a full step backward. She felt the satisfying give of her opponent's balance falter. The heel of Cersei's gilded boot scraping furrows through sand. Cersei recovered with ruthless economy. She twisted her torso aside, raking her sword in a hooking motion meant to cleave Lyanna's right wrist. Lyanna rolled her forearm, trapped the queen's edge between crossguard and pommel ring, and drove the trapped weapon to the side. Momentum wrenched both bodies off center, an entanglement of crimson and gray cloaks whipping wide. Lyanna smelled the perfume woven into Cersei's silk undertunic. Night-blooming roses over a bitter musk of fear. The queen spat through clenched teeth, the wordless wet hiss of a cornered animal. Her left hand darted, too quickly for courtesy, toward a dirk hidden in the small of her back. Lyanna glimpsed the flash of jeweled pommel beneath the parted folds of scale. Instinct screamed. She lunged into the queen's space, shoulders striking plated gorget with an iron thud. And the blade of Ice's daughter slammed down on the concealed dagger hand. Cersei cried out as metacarpals cracked beneath the flat of northern steel. The dirk skittered across sand to rest between two mosaic fragments, bearing the faint visage of a long-dead Targaryen prince. A collective gasp rippled across the grandstands, swelling into a roar that battered the arena walls. Somewhere above, trumpeters mounted on Tyrell balconies blared a frantic note, uncertain whether to herald momentum or mourn it. Fabric banners snapped in a sudden updraft, as if the dragon pit itself exhaled approval. Lyanna pressed, driving elbows and shoulders in a brutal clinch that left no gap for fancy swordplay. This was the way wolves fought. Close, unrelenting, teeth against throat. She felt Cersei's armor plate shift beneath her mailed forearm, caught the queen's breath hot and ragged upon her cheek. They twisted, boots crunching old dragonbone shards half buried under sand. Cersei rammed her forehead forward. Lyanna's helm deflected the skull-to-skull blow, but sparks exploded in her vision. She staggered, and Cersei tore free, retreating 3 paces, eyes wild. Blood speckled the queen's lower lip where teeth had torn flesh. She licked the red away with sharp deliberation, then lifted Black Sun into high guard. The blade's gilt fuller glimmered, traced by the sun. Her mailed left hand, swollen and trembling, clasped the pommel beneath her dominant right. A desperate brace that would slow her but lend brute force to every swing. Lyanna recognized the change in stance. The lioness planned to end things quickly by trading finesse for pure power. And why not? Each heartbeat that passed bled Cersei's stores of stamina. The slice at her waist seeped a darker crimson now, staining scale gaps along her left hip. However light the cut, it would stiffen as clotting slowed in the heat. Blood loss would dull reflexes. The lioness could read that treacherous ledger in her own body, and, predictably, she chose risk. Fine, die. Wolves thrived in risk. Lyanna eased into a low crouch, sword angled downward, tip trailing tiny furrows in the sand. Her breathing steadied. Noise receded again, as though she stood within frosted pine boughs of the god's wood, listening to nothing but heartbeats under bark. She remembered Corwin's counsel. Let the lion swipe broad and fast, draw her in. She pivoted her left foot, set weight on the ball, and waited. Cersei charged, blade descending in an overhand arc that split the glare of midday like a falling star. Lyanna darted sideways at the last instant, the massive stroke crashing down upon empty air, gouging a trough deep enough to swallow a child's fist. Sand exploded. Before Cersei could recover, Lyanna lunged inward, but instead of striking steel to breastplate, she chopped at the lioness' knee. The queen twisted partially free. The stroke glanced, scoring dented scales, yet the impact jerked her stance awry. Cersei jerked her mailed left fist toward Lyanna's face, but the swollen fingers failed to close. The blow weak. Lyanna ducked under it, reversing her grip, dragging the point of Ice's daughter across the underside of Cersei's right forearm, where a seam between bracer and gauntlet gaped. Blood answered, hotter than the noon sun. Cersei stumbled backward, swore through her wounded arm behind her, as though discarding the pain to trailing air. The crowd's clamor fractured into factions. Cheers from North and Vale, howls from Westerland's box seats, curses from shadowed lodges where sellsword captains watched with predatory interest. Gold cloaks lined the arena's lower walls, tense, hands upon spear shafts, uncertain which fate might bring riot. Above them, the Iron Throne gleamed atop its dais, unseated now, its jagged silhouette mocking every lofty oath sworn upon it. Lyanna straightened, wiping sweat from her brow with her sleeve. Heat shimmered from dragon-cracked paving stones, every breath scalded. A faint buzz hovered at the edge of her hearing, like flies over carrion, perhaps exhaustion whispering. But her mind remained knife-sharp. She saw Cersei glance sideways towards Sir Jaime's tall figure leaning forward on a balustrade. The Kingslayer's golden hair blazed under the sun, mirror to his sister's, but bound in a warrior's tale. His mouth moved, words lost in din, but Lyanna caught the desperate plea etched in his eyes. Yield, leave, live. Cersei's answering look held only contempt. Her pride burned brighter than pain. Lyanna recognized that fire. She had nursed a similar furnace after reading letters of Lannister ascendancy, after seeing northern lords bend to lion's coin. The duel was no longer about right or reign, but about the inexorable shape of identity. Lyanna the wolf against Cersei the lion. Animal spirits older than citadels locked in primal contest. And the realm, hungry for stories, would crown whichever spirit refused to break. An errant breeze swept across the pit, swirling sand into brief dust devils that danced between opponents. Lyanna blinked grit from her lashes. Across that gray haze, Cersei inhaled, bared teeth, and advanced not with desperate flurry, but with a swordsman's measured cadence. Left foot half-step, right foot sliding, hips turning to deliver perfectly aligned thrust. The queen still had technique beneath layers of rage. Lyanna parried the thrust diagonally, nudged the blade aside rather than meeting it in full, then rebounded with a riposte angling for throat. Cersei whipped her head back, blade recoiling into a tight slash that would have parted Lyanna's ear had she not snapped back 1 inch. Close. A bead of sweat trickled behind her collar. Your northern rust will break. Cersei hissed, voice roughened. Gold endures. Gold melts, Lyanna answered. She darted in, struck at the queen's blood-a-slick hip wound, drew another hiss of agony. The lioness retaliated with a broadside cut that grazed Lyanna's left pauldron, raising a bright spark but failing to breach the steel rings below. They separated again. Heartbeats hammered. High above, ravens circled, attracted by noise and the scent of fresh blood. Their black silhouettes cut across the cerulean vault, like errant quills scribbling future ballads. Lyanna wondered if the gods paid any heed to such mortal contests, or if they simply waited to see how memory would carve truth from spectacle. Would poets sing of cunning or courage, of destiny or chance? Sudden movement at the edge of vision. A commotion in the Lannister tier. A red-cloaked usher toppled sideways, replaced by a slender figure draped in striped Myrish silk. Varys, the spider. His bald crown gleamed. Plump hands rested upon balustrade while watery eyes observed the duel with sphinx-like calm. One hand idly fondled a silver ring etched with swirling glyphs. Spiders wove webs in silence, but their presence meant tremors already rippled along threads of conspiracy. If Lyanna fell, Varys would spin a tale to suit whatever heir rose next. If she triumphed, he would be first to kneel. A chill crawled her spine at the comprehension of how frail victory could be, balanced upon not merely her blade, but upon the stories others chose to voice. Focus. She tore her gaze away, locking again on the lioness. Cersei breathed heavily now, chest plating heaving. The wound at her waist darkened armor panels to near black. Yet the queen's green eyes glittered with a manic brilliance that reminded Lyanna of a cat, cornered by torchlight, more dangerous in extremis. Cersei lifted Black Sun two-handed overhead, tip questing like a scorpion sting. Then, without warning, she hurled the sword spinning end over end. Lyanna's jaw clenched, instinct screamed to duck. The blade sliced air, passing harmless by her right shoulder to clatter beyond in sand. But the throw was no surrender. It was distraction. Cersei lunged behind it, drawing another weapon, a long, slim spear that telescoped from a concealed sheath across her back. A Myrish dance spear, black hickory shaft capped in gleaming Valyrian steel. Its reach exceeded Lyanna's sword by a yard. The crowd shrieked. Judges protested, but the High Septon's voice cracked uselessly. Dual law did not prohibit multiple arms so long as they were borne by the contestant at start. An ambiguity the Crown's lawyers had obviously exploited. Cersei's smirk confirmed premeditation. She whirled the spear overhead, blade whistling, converting distance into lethal advantage. Lyanna retreated 2 paces, analyzing vector and tempo. Spear outranges sword, closing in becomes perilous. She loosened stance, knees bent, weight evenly poised. Corrin's final midnight lesson returned. If the enemy chooses range, give them emptiness. Make them commit to the lunge, then take range away. Cersei jabbed forward, spear point lancing for Lyanna's left upper arm. Lyanna swayed inside the jab, the point grazing mail, scraping rings with metallic hiss. She seized the haft with her offhand, yanked sideways, pivoted on rear foot. Cersei's greater mass and armored stance resisted. Both women spun, locked in seesaw of leverage. Lyanna allowed momentum to whirl her 180 degrees around Cersei's flank, then released the haft abruptly and slashed for the queen's exposed calf. She missed by inches, but forced Cersei to hop awkwardly, spear point gouging sand. They parted again, dust curtained between them. Lyanna's left palm stung. The spear haft had splintered a shard of hickory across her glove. She flexed fingers, ignoring minor pain. A shadow passed overhead, a raven swooping low, cawing, before flaring to perch upon a jagged arch of broken masonry. Omen or coincidence? No matter. Cersei rotated her injured wrist experimentally. Swollen flesh bulged grotesque under rings. Grip on the spear faltered. She swapped hands, left dominant now. The spear moved slower under untrained hand. Opportunity. Lyanna stepped in, feinted high, then chopped low at the spear's midshaft. Wood splintered. The spear buckled but did not break. Cersei snarled, reversed grip, attempted a sweeping cut. Too wide. Lyanna stabbed forward in a straight line, tip skimming along the inner edge of Cersei's gorget, scraping metal until halted by shoulder blade, close enough to feel cartilage jolt. Cersei yelped, recoiled, dropping the spear. It clattered, broken butt, rolling to rest against a fragment of dragon bone. For the first time, Cersei stood unarmed. Her eyes darted toward black sun glinting 50 feet away. Between her and the sword, soft sand churned into ridges, strewn hickory shards, the looming skeleton of Balerion's spine forming an uneven barricade. She would never reach it unless Lyanna permitted. Lyanna raised Ice Daughter, reversed grip, offered the hilt. The gesture hushed the arena in a breath. "Pick up your sword," she said, voice carrying across the pit. "Face me steel to steel as you boasted." Cersei's gaze flickered between sword and offered mercy. Pride wrestled with survival. But Lannisters were not bred to beg. She spat blood onto sand, straightened despite pain, strode, limp pronounced, toward black sun. Lyanna waited, sword lowered. Murmurs billowed like thunderheads among the masses. Some awestruck at northern chivalry, others jeering at wasted chance. Halfway to her sword, Cersei hesitated, head drooping. A strange sway overtook her posture. Lyanna's brow furrowed. She advanced cautiously. Blood loss? Heat stroke? The queen staggered, knees buckling. Suddenly she pitched forward, one hand clawing at breastplate. Gasps rippled. Lyanna closed distance quickly, catching the queen under one elbow before she collapsed. Cersei's skin burned with feverish heat. Her breath came in ragged rasps. Lyanna lowered her to kneel upon the sand, wariness warring with concern. Cersei's lips moved. The words were faint, nearly drowned in clamor. Lyanna bent closer. "What was in the nightshade?" Cersei whispered, eyes rolling. "Told the fool, lesser dos. Not now." Nightshade. Lyanna's heart tightened. Had the queen dosed herself? No. Someone else's scheme? Suddenly Cersei's limbs convulsed. Foam flecked her mouth. Poison coursed. The High Septon and attending maesters rushed in, robes billowing. Gold cloaks advanced. Shields raised, but Corran stepped between them and his lady, sword bare. Blue-clad acolytes knelt by Cersei, uncorking vials, urging her to drink milk of the poppy. Her throat spasmed. Liquid spilled down her chin. Overhead, the sky dimmed as a stray cloud eclipsed the sun, casting the arena in wan half-light. Murmurs spread like fire. Poison at a royal duel. Sacrilege. Scandal. Ser Jaime vaulted barrier railings, hit sand with a grunt, sprinted across arena. Guards moved to block but parted at the Kingslayer's cry. He fell to knees beside Cersei, gauntlet stroking her damp hair. Grief-stricken fury twisted his features toward Lyanna, yet he uttered nothing, perhaps comprehending the absurdity of blaming the wolf for venom that marred the lion's triumph. Lyanna sheathed her blade, stepping back as healers clustered. She surveyed stands. Varys no longer perched at rail. The spiders slithered into shadows. Pycelle puffed out his chest, sputtering orders. Grand Maester or not, his quake betrayed fear. The High Septon raised hands for silence, but noise crescendoed. Voices clamoring accusations, wagers, outrage. Suddenly a trumpet clamored from the hand's dais. Lord Tywin Lannister strode forward in burnished plate, green-gold robe, swirling cut. The old lion. Except Tywin had been dead near a decade. This apparition bore his countenance, but slimmer, younger. No, Kevin Lannister. Regent in hand, face stern, jaw set. He raised a parchment scroll. "The Queen's champion has fallen to foul treachery," he bellowed. "The duel cannot be concluded. The Stark pretender must be taken into custody until the poisoner be found." Shouts exploded. Bronzion Royce leapt atop a bench, voice like avalanche. "She stays not." Northern and Vale men brandished arms. Across the pit, Lannister outriders unsheathed. Gold cloaks formed uncertain line, torn by conflicting loyalties. Lyanna lifted her hand. Noise dropped as if commanded by thunder. She spoke calm, yet her words crackled. "No treachery from my camp." Search us, search our quarters. I demand it. Bring forth your alchemists. I would know who sought to silence Queen and Wolf alike. Kevin's brows lowered. We will indeed search. He gestured. Gold cloaks approached her rangers with shackles drawn. Corin's blade flicked up. First man binds my lady loses his hand, he growled. Tension pulsed like taut bowstring. High in a Tyrell balcony, Lady Olenna rose, her rose-green gown swaying. She tapped cane upon rail. Enough, she snapped, her voice surprisingly clear. No one wins if swords cross now. The Queen yet breathes, barely. Let maesters tend while we dither. Her pragmatic admonition cut through fervor. Kevin hesitated and inclined his head. Escort her grace to the Red Keep, he signaled. Jaime lifted Cersei in arms and strode from arena flanked by maesters. Blood dotted the sand in crimson petals. Lyanna remained, cloak whipping. She realized the duel's verdict hung suspended, outcome undefined. With the Queen incapacitated, honor demanded postponement or forfeit. Whispers eddied. Some claimed she had won by default. Others insisted the duel ended only upon death or submission. There existed no codicil for poison. She turned slow circle, meeting eyes of lords. Mace Tyrell chewing mustache. Prince Doran's representative leaning on polished cane. Lord Walder Frey's snide grin. Thoros of Myr swigging wine. She observed how quickly power vacuums formed. Already alliances shifted. Footfalls approached. Sir Brynden, Bronze Jean, Lord Wyman. They formed half-ring around her. You must leave the pit, the Blackfish murmured. Lannister arrows may find reason to loose. Yes, Lord Wyman wheezed, double chin trembling. Better to remove to neutral ground, the Sept or the Dragon Gate stronghold. Lyanna exhaled, senses thrumming. She glanced down at a single droplet of blood clinging to her gauntlet cuff. Not hers. Cersei's. She flicked it away. We withdraw to the manse. Let the city cool. She raised her voice to Stan's. I go under truce. Any who hinder my passage break dual law, and will answer before 7 and old gods alike. And a smattering of cheers, trembling but audible. She strode toward Eastern Arch, her allies closing ranks. Around them, gold cloaks parted. Some looked away, ashamed. Others glared. Yet one captain stepped forward, tall, dark-bearded, eyes like charred oak. He bowed at the waist. My men saw no poison delivered from the north, he said softly. I advise you hurry, my lady. A quiet admission that not all cloth of gold belonged to lions. Lyanna dipped her head. They marched through archways echoing with chaotic chatter. Up a flight of steps, out onto the street of looms. The sun had sunk westward, shadows elongated like spears. Crowds packed alleys, parted as her procession advanced. She smelled roasted onions, dung, sweat, and acrid fear. Whispered rumors already spread. Queen dying, northern witchcraft, hidden master of whispers plot. She glimpsed a silver stag brooch on a bystander's jerkin. One of Renly's old loyalists, perhaps, eyes alight with dangerous hope. Inside the Belgrave manse, guards doubled watch. Maester Myrick, sent north years ago by the Citadel, hovered with salts and linens. Corin's rangers secured perimeters. Lyanna permitted her mail to be unbuckled but refused a change of tunic. She wanted Cersei's blood to stain until truth emerged. She sat at the long hall's head table, knuckles white round a cup of watered wine. Bronze Jean spread a scrap of parchment, a cipher scroll intercepted by Royce scouts on arena periphery. Sketched sigil, a viper entwined with grapes. Dorne? Tyrell. The code named Tears of Lies and Fall of Lioness. They debated. Lord Wyman suggested the Tyrells desired throne through Margaery. Lady Olenna's earlier interjection might have been mask. Brynden pointed at Viper. House Martell thirsted for vengeance over Elia and Oberyn. Nightshade, though, not Tears, who used both. Perhaps someone cunning enough to forge confusion. As they argued, Lyanna's mind returned to the duel's final seconds. Cersei's admission told the fool, lesser dose. Not now. It implied complicity, but not suicidal. She perhaps planned to ingest small quantity of nightshade earlier to steal nerves, but some saboteur intensified dosage. Or else a conspirator delivered stronger file disguised as mild. Qyburn, perhaps. But he had perished months ago, rumors said. Still, in King's Landing death seldom permanent for secrets. A bell tolled from distant septi, deep resonance fracturing twilight. Sir Brynden paused. Announcement forthcoming. They moved to balcony. Across rooftops they saw torch columns snake toward the Red Keep. Cersei's stretcher. Inside the Queen's solar, maesters battled poison while ravens scratched at shutters. A silhouette paced. Jaime. Another, shorter, stooped, Pycelle. A third, slender shape, stood aloof, arms folded. Kevan perhaps. Candles dipped, their flames reflecting on obsidian mirror where earlier Cersei admired her ruthless ambition. Now the reflection showed only frailty. Sweat sheened, lips blue-tinged. Lyanna withdrew from balcony. She needed clarity. She ordered her companions to hold council in shifts and sought solitude in the manse's small godswood courtyard. An imported weirwood sapling, leaves pale pink, trunk thin. She knelt among violet lantern moss, pressing fingertips to cool bark. She whispered the ancient words of her childhood, fragments of old tongue taught by old Nan. She asked nothing, offered only intention. To walk whatever path honor wound, even if that path meandered now into labyrinth of intrigue. Somewhere near midnight, footsteps scraped gravel. She rose, hand on hilt, but the visitor had arrived unarmed. A boy of perhaps 14, ragged cloak, eyes sharp. He bowed. Message from the hand, he murmured, pressing scroll sealed with wax bearing imprint of lion rampant. She broke seal. Inside, ink scrawled, Queen lives, but her voice is silence until dawn. We will convene in the throne room tomorrow at first light to determine fate of Duel, with representatives of Faith, Citadel, and great houses. Attend if you dare. Kevan Lannister. Mender Hanyoidi. She folded parchment. Dare? She would. Yet meeting might be trap. She sent Bronze Yawn to confirm invitation through his veil spies. Dawn seeped gray through overcast. Rain threatened. She donned fresh tunic but still bore stained cloak. Let the court see evidence. Her contingent. Royce, Blackfish, Wyman, Maester Myrick, 3 rangers, walked the rain-slick streets to the Red Keep. Gold cloaks eyed them, but allowed entry. Inside throne room, braziers smoldered. The Iron Throne loomed. Lords formed semicircle. Kevan seated upon Hand's chair. Lady Olenna clad in emerald. Prince Doran's envoys. Lord Gawain Westerling. Lords Aaron Frey. Celtigar Hightower. Faith representatives in septon robes. Varys, unassuming. No Cersei. Instead, Sir Jaime standing alone before throne. Sword sheathed. Kevan rose. We address Duel's suspension. Queen yet breathes but remains unconscious. Physicians say if she survives Nightshade, she will be bedridden moons. Trial by combat requires conscious champion. Imagine why. Prince Doran's envoy spoke. Thus she forfeits crown. Laughter among river lords. Kevan's expression chilled. Forfeit? The duel was not to death, but submission or inability to fight, yet sabotage invalidates proceedings. We propose postponement until her grace recovers. Mace Tyrell chortled. 7 hells wait warmer than that recovery. Olenna flicked fan. Mace subsided. Lyanna stepped forward. I accept postponement on one condition. Crown yields temporary stewardship to neutral council until Queen recovers to prevent coercion of outcome. Gasps. Dot. Kevan's fists clenched. Never. Jaime's voice cut through. I second the Lady Stark. Surprise rippled. Jaime continued, gaze distant. If Cersei is to reclaim crown through rightful combat, the realm must see fairness, else victory stinks of cowardice. Appoint Council of 3, 1 crown, 1 north, 1 faith. Kevan's face drained of color. Nephew, I have spoken. Jaime bowed to Lyanna slightly. A debt for sparing Cersei earlier? Perhaps. Faith militant's High Sparrow, gaunt, barefoot, nodded. The seven favored justice. A triad suits. He volunteered his seat. Kevin exhaled, capitulated to avoid sparking open rebellion. Thus, the Trine Council formed. Kevin Lannister for Crown, Lyanna Stark for Challenger, High Sparrow for Faith. Duties: oversee investigation of poison, maintain peace, schedule resume duel upon clearance by Citadel physician. They agreed to reconvene weekly. Sessions stretched long under candlelight. Secrets peeled like onion skins. Alchemists testified to vials swapped. Servants vanished. A Myrish cell of faceless men rumored. Spies captured one Tyrell steward with duplicate keys to wine cellars. Under interrogation he confessed altering dosage at Lady Olenna's behest. Yet further prying revealed Dornish gold funded his greed. The plot thickened into tangle, each house pointing finger away. Meanwhile, across city alleys, small folk bit into rumor repay fruit. The North might march. Dragons stirring in old Valyria. Azor Ahai reborn. Street prophets hailed Lyanna Queen of Snow and Sand. Ballads rose in taverns. The wolf and the lioness set to lute. Lyanna trained daily within Belgrave courtyard, perfecting footwork, though bruise on thigh deepened to sickly yellow. She corresponded with Eddard, Raven replies lagging weeks. Yet when his answer came, her heart steadied. Do what honor demands, sister. The North stands. Short, stark, yet weighty as ice. 3 weeks passed. Cersei lingered near death, drifting in fever. Maesters employed leechcraft, rare elixirs. One dawn, she briefly woke. Muttered half-coherent threats, then sank again. Some whispered she might never wield sword. Others that she would rise with viper venom in veins alike. Second life. At council, Kevin insisted duel. Require Queen's personal return. Else a proxy champion selected. High Sparrow demurred. Duel invoked ancient Holmganga. Champion must be claimant to throne. Lyanna cited precedent of Nyra the Sea Green and Valerian challenge to Egan II Datagihad. They argued. One dusk, Yanni visited Belgrave Manse unannounced. Unarmed. Guards parted under Bryndon's wary gaze. Jaime requested private discourse with Lyanna under Weirwood. There, candle lanterns cast amber halos. He spoke quietly. My sister may die. I love her still. Yet the realm cannot splinter. If she passes, Lannister claim weakens. Tommen is dead. Myrcella in Sunspear, lost to sands. I ask you, should you ascend, protect the innocent. Judge me for my sins, but spare the city. Lyanna studied the Kingslayer. Lines of regret carved deeper than sword scars. She nodded slowly. If fate crowns me, justice will weigh every soul, not vengeance. He offered a slim leather bundle, detailed guard postings within Red Keep, caches of wildfire last recorded, black ledger of hidden debts. Knowledge is power. Use it wisely. He left, without further word. Inside the city, unrest brewed. Bread prices soared. Merchants hoarded grain, expecting siege. Gold cloaks stretched thin. Rumor of a frailed coup reached Triers. Lord Wyman growled to raise northern levies anchored at Maiden's Song. The council forbade armed gathering within 5-league radius, save city garrison. Yet violence found cracks. A Tyrell courier knifed in stable. A Royce squire pushed from rampart. Each blood drop widened rifts. Lyanna walked markets disguised, listening. Small folk feared lionless vacuum. They remembered Mad King's fire. She saw children play reenactment of duel, wooden swords clashing. Wolf Girl always winning. She felt weight of expectation heavier than chainmail. On 42nd day after poison, maesters declared Cersei might never leave bed unaided. Muscles atrophied, organs damaged. She spoke in soft rasp, demanded wine she could not hold. Kevin delivered message to council. Crown considers Queen unfit, proposes Prince Joffrey's rumored bastard, Edric Storm, as inheritor. Wild speculation. Chaos. High Sparrow intoned this crisis sign of divine displeasure. He proposed great council of all surviving houses to elect monarch. Kevan balked. Lyanna pondered. Perhaps duel no longer path. Maybe democracy of nobles. But word arrived by Raven. Eddard Stark, Robb at his side, marched south with host of 10,000 banners streaming across neck. Not invasion, but show of solidarity. They camp near Harrenhal, awaiting outcome. Their presence steel behind Lyanna's negotiation. Kevan saw threat. He countered by promising Riverlords grain debt forgiveness and Dornish trade incentives, buying neutrality. Tyrell sipped at offer reluctantly. Council sessions grew rancorous. One night Kevan accused Wolf of engineering poison to avoid defeat. High Sparrow nearly excommunicated him for slander. Varys reported sellsword companies massing in stepstones under Lannister coin. War specter loomed. Lyanna slept little. She dreamt of ice cracking over deep water, of lions pacing along edges, of a winter rose blooming bloodward. Upon waking, she realized dream's message. Alliances shift like ice flows. Step carefully or plunge. Next council morning, she proposed radical truce. Dissolve monarchy into triumvirate regency until realm stable. Each region semi-autonomous. Re-evaluate in 5 years. Kevan rejected. High Sparrow intrigued yet cautious. Debate raged. But then Raven's screams tore sky. News from Sunspear. Princess Myrcella, Hostegest, had perished in suspicious fall. Doran's envoy erupted, swearing vow of blood. Dornish blamed Lannisters. Kevan paled. War drums beat faintly. Within hours, riots ignited in Fleabottom. Crowds smashing wine shops, hurling stones at gold cloaks. Fire licked thatched roofs. Lyanna dispatched rangers to aid bucket brigades. She led personally, hauling water, dousing flame. Small folk saw her among them, swordless, face smeared with soot, handing bread to hungry children, displaced by blaze. Songs began in earnest that night. The Wolf Queen loves the small. Kevan's hold weakened. City small folk idolized Lyanna. Houses wavered. Lannister coffers stretched near limit, paying for mercenaries. Pycelle died of apoplexy. Qyburn rumored returned, skulking crypts. Jaime reappeared at Manse. He knelt. Genuine. End this before realm snaps. He offered personal renunciation of any Lannister claim in exchange for Cersei's comfortable exile at Casterly Rock and guarantee to protect innocent Lannisters. He would join Kingsguard for new ruler, vow to uphold oath honestly for once. Lyanna weighed. Pride nagged. Her duel incomplete. But thousands would die if civil war erupted. She summoned council privately with neutral lords. Kevan absent, laid low by gout. At that secret midnight meeting, under flicker of dragon-bone chandeliers, she tabled fistful of iron-cold facts. Cersei's near death, Myrcella dead, Tommen dead, Baratheon line extinct. Lannisters nearly bankrupt, small folk starving, dragons still stone but wildfire caches, still fuming below city. She asked, do we crown violence or reason? The High Sparrow closed eyes, prayed. Olenna smirked. Doran's envoy scowled, but considered winter trade. Lord Royce hammered table. Name her queen already. Wyman rumbled assent. They drafted Accord of the Dragon Pit. Lyanna Stark to ascend as protector of the realm, provisional queen for 15-year term, followed by assembly review. Council seats for Reach, Dorne, Stormlands, Vale Riverlands, Westerlands. Faith granted oversight. Night's Watch pledged funding. Small folk protected by bread levy. But first, they must face Kevan and Cersei. Accord day dawned bleak, drizzle soft. Throne room filled again. Lyanna entered in plain gray surcoat, no crown. She found Kevan leaning on cane by hearth. Cersei absent. Jaime beside him, expression set. Lannister retainers tense. High Sparrow read Accord. Lannisters objected. Debate soared. Kevan's voice cracked. Objections became pleas. He saw numbers. Houses arrayed behind Wolf. Yet, legalism still weapon. Then doors burst wide. Sir Gregor Clegane? A dead man, revived? No, his brother Sandor the Hound strode in, tossing sack onto floor. From it rolled heads of 2 sellsword captains hired by Lannisters. Blood pooled. City's minefield of blades. Sandor growled. North pays better protection coin. He stood behind Lyanna. Kevin bowed his head. Jaime removed sword, laid at Lyanna's feet. I yield my blade. Silence heavy as snow. Lyanna knelt to pick up sword, reversed hilt toward Jaime. Rise, serve the realm, she said. He took sword, bowed, tears glimmering. Thus Lannister surrender sealed. Kevin asked only that Cersei be spared. Lyanna agreed, prisoner within Maegor's holdfast until transport to Rock pending health. The Iron Throne stood behind them, cold, indifferent. High Sparrow gestured for Lyanna to seat. She approached. Fingers brushed jagged armrest. She paused, turned to lords. I accept duty, not privilege, she said. Let throne remain empty until realm healed. She ascended only first step, not seat, facing crowd. Olenna tapped fan approvingly. Doran's envoy bowed. Lord Royce pounded fist on chest. Roar rose. Outside bells pealed, rain turning to mist. Fleabottom cheered as Crier announced Protector Lyanna. Somewhere deep in Red Keep, Cersei stirred from fever dream, eyes opening to shadow of bars beyond bed curtains. Night settled. On balcony overlooking Blackwater, Lyanna stood alone. Below, torches traced city arteries like rivers of fireflies. She inhaled briny air, feeling weight of unseen crown on brow. Tomorrow negotiations would begin. Grain, roads, Dothraki rumors, Greyjoy raids, White Walker's myth, footsteps. Corin, Darwin. He offered carved token she had returned after dual suspension. You kept vow. She looked at wooden emblem under starlight. Duel never finished, she whispered. Corin shrugged. Maybe not with steel, but courage proved. He saluted and withdrew. Lyanna lingered until dawn's first light, painted eastern clouds rose gold. She wondered if Bran watched from Winterfell, if Benjen would smile, if Father's spirit approved. She set token beside railing, wind whistling over it. The realm's future hummed like a blade still mid-swing, uncertain but poised. Behind her, bells chimed again, summoning Protector to small council's first session. Lyanna squared shoulders, turned inward. The corridor stretched ahead, torchlit, lined with new guards bearing mixed sigils, the first evidence of unity. She stepped forward, footsteps echoing on marble like drum beats, counting the opening measures of an unfinished ballad. For though one duel had stalled, another greater struggle began, the forging of 7 fractious kingdoms into harmony under a queen who refused a throne. And in quiet chambers far below, where forgotten dragon skulls collected dust, a single raven hopped along a beam, head cocked. It let out a throaty croak, as if to say, stories never truly end. Wah! Moonlight filtered through the great shutters of Maegor's holdfast, turning the stones the color of frozen ash. Somewhere far below, a wolf howled, a strange, unaccustomed sound in the capital. Yet the city now thrummed with change, and even the beasts of the north sensed new purpose coursing through the southern air. Lyanna Stark, protector of the realm, stood within the vaulted passage outside the council chamber, steadying her breath before the first session of a government that could not yet decide what name to give itself. Behind those carved oak doors waited lords, envoys, septons, and sellsword captains, each ready to press their claim upon an infant peace. She felt their urgency pooling like water behind a dam. A squire tightened the last strap on her gray leather gauntlet, eyes wide with reverence. She thanked him with a nod, then stepped through the threshold. Chandeliers guttered overhead, their iron branches dripping molten wax onto a long mahogany table scarred by decades of debate. The small council had once been 7. Now it swelled to 13, with benches for guests beyond. No iron throne loomed here. Lyanna intended that, and everything it symbolized, to remain absent for now. She eased into the tall chair at the table's center, resisting any impulse to stand apart like a warrior on the eve of battle. Today the sword would stay sheathed, though the fight for the realm was no less mortal. Jaime Lannister sat to her right, white cloak freshly pressed yet missing the crimson stains of old loyalties. His golden head bowed slightly, acknowledging her arrival. High Sparrow occupied the left seat, fingers steepled beneath his ragged sleeves, eyes half-lidded as though communing with unseen angels. Bronze Jon Royce leaned close to Wyman Manderly, the two old warriors murmuring in measured tones. At the far end, Lady Olenna Tyrell flourished a quill like a general directing cavalry. Prince Oberyn's niece, Elaria Sand, represented a grieving Dorne in Prince Doran's stead, her dark eyes following every subtle twitch of power around the table. Many more crowded the room, each bearing sigils bright enough to draw moths. Lyanna's voice broke the hush. "We have a kingdom to mend. Let us begin." Sir Kevan's chair remained empty. Illness, or pride, had kept him to his chambers. Reports claimed he spent each dawn pacing before Cersei's sickbed, pleading with gods he scarcely believed in. That absence left a vacuum Casterly Rock's courtiers scrambled to fill. Varys, gliding in the outer circle like a quiet moon, studied every face and took note of whose gaze lingered longest on Kevan's abandoned seat. The first petition came from Lord Hightower's steward. Ships out of Old Town had been harried by raiders flying Kraken banners. Euron Greyjoy, newly crowned King of the Isles, saw an opportunity in the realm's disorder. And there were darker whispers too. A great fleet being prepared beyond the horizon, sails blacker than a moonless night. Lyanna summoned the master of ships, an aging Manderly cousin named Roderick, to outline patrols. Without a royal navy to guard every cape, they must rely on local fleets, bound by charter. She inked an edict on the spot. A levy of 10 warships from each coastal lord, commands rotating quarterly under a unified banner, the dire banner, Grey Wolf stitched upon blue field. Resistance would be treason. Several lords stiffened at the word, but Lady Olenna offered a satisfied snort. "Do something, or we'll be paying ironborn tariffs on every apple that sails up the Mander." Next came the grain ledger. Winter, though distant, cast its shadow. The Reach had enough harvest to feed 2 kingdoms, yet its roads crawled with bandits. Lord Tarly, summoned by Raven, arrived an hour late in dusty mail. Bowing stiffly to the northern woman who now governed his fate, Lyanna tasked him with resecuring the Roserad, promising royal writ and manpower, so long as grain caravans traveled north free of tithe. Tarly frowned, calculating but nodded. He'd fight for honor, but not against arithmetic. By midday, the council's throats rasped. Melons sweated on silver platters, untouched. When a Tyrell steward tried to ladle honey wine into Lyanna's cup, Jaime intercepted, sniffed the flask before permitting a pour. Murmurs sparked, but with Cersei still writhing under poison's lash, caution was worshipped above courtesy. A messenger burst in. Riots on the street of Silk. Gold cloaks held back a mob chanting, "No more coin for horrors of war." Ragged veterans demanded silver owed since Blackwater. Many bore half-healed burns. The council's eyes shifted to Bronn, now commander of the city watch, lounging against a pillar. He shrugged. "They want wages. Coin coffers are Lannister dry." Lyanna rose. "Then we pay them. Bread if not silver. Open the granary seized from Littlefinger's assets." Bronn's grin widened. "And the brothels?" She met his gaze. "Keep them open with the king's, protector's, blessing. Men without hope burn cities. Men without coin but with comfort only sing bawdy songs." Bronn saluted, already picturing his increased profits. Afternoon's last petition came from the north itself, a raven bearing Eddard Stark's seal. His host lingered at Harrenhal, and supplies dwindled. But the letter offered more than plea. It proposed sending builders south, honorable men of Winterfell's guilds, to reconstruct charred districts. Lyanna read Ned's careful script aloud, her chest tightening at his familiar stoicism. Some whispered manipulation, using charity to plant northern influence in the capital. But she knew her brother's heart. She accepted, and Roy seconded, motion passing without dissent. Only at dusk did she allow recess. She retreated to a small solar overlooking the courtyard where dragon skulls once lined the walls. Jaime followed, closing the door behind them. Lamps cast gold pools across rush-strewn floor. "You made it look easy," he said. "It felt like sawing ice with a bone knife," she replied, rubbing her temples. She poured water, drank deep. "We signal unity, but every lord counts daggers in the dark. They wait for my first misstep." Jaime leaned against the casement. "Perhaps you should sit the throne if only to silence questions." "No, Dottie. The throne is a sword nested in lies. I'll not chain myself to it." She moved to the window. Below, dragons' head bones glimmered under torches, black relics of conquest. She thought how power once flowed from fire and terror. Now it must rise from something slower, less certain. Trust. A knock interrupted. Sandor Clegane thrust his scarred face in. "Girl wants audience." He stepped back to reveal Arya Stark. Hair tangled, breeches torn, eyes bright as dawn. She strode inside, cheeks flushed for Marlor knew what mischief. "Sister," she breathed, arms wrapping around Lyanna's waist. Lyanna, stunned, hugged her fiercely. Jaime retreated, hiding a smile. Arya had ridden with a courier Valfast from Harrenhal. She refused to wait in camp while tales of wolves ruling the south reached northern tents. She perched on a bench, recounting how she'd sparred blindfolded with Sirio's memories, danced with a Braavosi blade, fended off bandits single-handed. Lyanna listened, half sister, half wary stateswoman. Arya's presence brought warmth but also complication. A stark hostage to fortune. Night settled, and still the city's arteries glowed. Lyanna dispatched Corran scouts to examine sewers for smuggled wildfire. If Targaryen madmen once stored barrels beneath streets, Lannisters might do worse. Then she sought rest in chambers adjoining a modest terrace where a single gnarled lemon tree grew, a relic from Dorne transplanted decades ago by a homesick handmaiden. Pale fruit scented the air. She fell asleep to its bittersweet fragrance, dreams awash with distant snows. She woke before dawn. Dawn found her armored lightly, hair bound mid-skull, pacing the terrace while the city stretched beneath a violet sky. Bells tolled. Smiths clanged. Crows cawed. A small bird alighted on the lemon tree, chirped, flew off. She wondered if Sansa still breathed northern air, or if the veil sheltered her. Footsteps. Jaime again, cloak swishing. "Ravens," he said, handing slips. "One from Pike. Euron's fleet sailed east, perhaps toward the Arbor. Another from Casterly Rock. Clusters of gold owed to the Iron Bank now past due. The Iron Bank of Braavos, seldom asked twice. The second request came with ships." She thanked him, scanning lines. Jaime hesitated, then drew from his belt a scroll sealed with plain wax. "From Cersei." Lyanna's pulse quickened. She broke seal. The script was jagged, fever-bred. "To the wolf who stole my crown. The gods waste breath on a kinslayer. I waste ink. My end comes slow, but I die Lion Queen, never your subject. You may take the iron chair, but its blades shall cut you deeper than my spite. Burn my body, cast the ashes to Blackwater, it'll not rest among traitors. Tell Jaime I forgive him nothing. Cersei of House Lannister." Lyanna folded note. Silence heavy. Jaime's lips trembled, but he drew a long breath. She wrote it during lucid hour. "I thought you should know." "When?" "She is dying," Lyanna asked. "Maesters say days, weeks at most. The poison scoured her organs." His voice cracked. "I loved her, but there may be mercy in release." Lyanna grasped his forearm. "Shall face no torment. A pyre by the sea as she wishes." He nodded. Shoulders sagging. Burden of grief accepted. A new day's council opened with grim news. Euron's first raids on the Arbor left vineyards aflame. Lord Paxter Redwing's wine fleet destroyed. Reach envoys demanded retaliation. At Lyanna's urging, the council voted emergency conscription. Every port, from Old Town to Lys, would furnish cogs to bolster the dire banner. Admiral Roderick, commanding. The Reach contributed 60 galleys, Dorne 20 swift Dromons. Even the toothless Stormlands scraped together 9 weather-beaten hulks. Letters flew by Raven, war on water while peace on land, barely rooted. The second blow, the Iron-Banked dispatched emissaries, led by a tall iron-browed Braavosi named Tycho Nestoris. He arrived clad in somber wool, eyes glinting like coin. The royal treasury, emptied by Lannister extravagance, owed millions. Failure to repay meant crows at feast, sellswords and faceless threats. Lyanna proposed renegotiation. Half the debt, repaid over 10 years, interest guaranteed by northern silver mines and new tariffs on sea trade. Tycho listened, expression stone. He offered a counter. Release of royal dragonglass hoards beneath Dragonstone as collateral, plus a Stark guardian placed within Iron Bank vaults, a hostage, essentially. The council balked. That evening, Lyanna stood on the battlements of the Red Keep, thinking of dragonglass, of winter creeping through the far north. Ravens spoke of eerie lights beyond the wall, blue fires in ancient forests. Maester Merrick dismissed them as will-o'-the-wisps, but Lyanna had felt a chill deeper than weather. Still, debt threatened the realm more immediately than rumors of myth. She decided. Dragonstone's troves extensive. Miners could carve but not empty them. She'd yield half the hoard as collateral, with Shireen Baratheon steward as overseer. A man of proven caution, Tycho accepted, impressed by swift compromise. Crisis deferred. On the 10th day of Lyanna's rule, Cersei Lannister died. Jaime stood alone at her bedside, no maesters, no septas. Her last breath rattled like a rusted hinge, carrying away years of blood and gold. At dawn, bells tolled. The city waited for riots, yet none came. Instead, small folk gathered beneath Traitor's Walk, lighting candles. Some spat on the ground, others bowed heads. Fear too had died, and its passing left the streets quieter. The pyre rose upon a spit of land jutting into Blackwater, the Queen's Bar where long ago Rhaenyra's supporters met doom. Wind whipped salt into flames while small council attended. Jaime placed a golden rose atop the shroud, a Tyrell flower for a lioness who hated Tyrells. Perhaps he saw poetry. He whispered, "Goodbye, sister," and stepped back. Lyanna watched the flames devour crimson silk, felt heat on her cheeks, wondered if ghosts applauded or wept. She prayed for Cersei's soul anyway, though she doubted gods would listen. The funeral emboldened conspirators. That night, Kevan Lannister's gout miraculously abated. He summoned banners, claiming House Lannister must safeguard Westerlands from Dornish aggression. He requested leave to depart with 300 retainers. Lyanna granted, with an escort of northern outriders, careful eyes to ensure his road led west, not to secret armies. Kevan accepted through clenched teeth. Without Cersei, his fury dimmed. Winter winds dropped south. Courtyard fountains filmed with ice. Small folk spoke of breath hanging white like spirits. Lyanna accelerated grain shipments. She formed the Frost Relief Committee, Manderley, Tyrell, and Dorne cooperating. She visited granaries personally, surprising workers who knelt. She ordered them to stand. She remembered Eddard. A ruler must know the look of hunger. She ate broth among them, listening. Word spread. The Wolf Queen eats with beggars. But not all hailed her. Faith militants, empowered under Sparrow, decried her refusal to crown. They preached that only a king or queen anointed under the Seven could protect the realm from demons of night. Their sermon smelled of plot. Some lords slipped them coin. Lyanna confronted the High Sparrow in the Sept of Baelor. Candles burned thick on altars, smoke curling like questions. She asked plainly if he sought a crown of thorns. He looked into her eyes, saw steel. "I serve the Seven only," she answered, "then serve them by feeding their flock, not devouring it." She provided grain from northern caravans to Sept-run orphanages. The Sparrow nodded, but shadows lingered. Arya trained daily with Sandor in the practice yard, sparks flying from each clash. Court gossip told of a hound grown protective of a wolf pup, who fought like wildfire. Once, Lyanna watched from balcony, pride warring with dread. Arya's blade zipped under Sandor's guard, nicking his wrist. Blood beaded. The hound cursed, laughed. If you'd been there, Joffrey would have worn his head on pike sooner. Arya grinned. Lyanna turned away, heart pounding. War-hardened children been grown early. Builders arrived from Winterfell, bearded men smelling of pine resin. They joined masons of King's Landing, raising scaffolds around Septry Row. The city, though burnt, would again wear marble. Northern stone set alongside Reach limestone formed patchwork testaments to unity. Yet Euron pressed. His ships struck Stonehelm, then drifted north to Harry Gulltown. Lord Grafton begged aid. Roderick Manderley sailed with new dire fleet, clashing off Crackclaw Point. Victories came but costly. Reports told of monstrous priests in bone masks, chanting storms. Sailors vanishing. Whisper of sorcery. Lyanna convened war council. She dispatched ravens to Dragonstone. Sir Davos summoned to negotiate with Melisandre's Red Sisters, if they still breathed, for insight into sea-warding flames. Some balked at allying with Red Priests. Lyanna ignored them. High above, ravens still told of cold. White Harbor fisherfolk found bodies frozen stiff, eyes blue glassy. A north wind carried snow by Samhan, unseasonal. Eddard wrote again, urging caution. He had visited last hearth. Men spoke of night shadows moving into haunted forest. Hard-home older nightmares. Lyanna's spine chilled. She asked Maester Myrick to research dragonglass forging, ordered smiths to experiment mixing northern iron with obsidian dust for arrowheads. Evenings found her in the solar, quills, parchment, oil lamp. She drafted the Charter of Seven, a codified pact dividing powers. Protector to command armies abroad. Council to legislate. Faith to sanctify. Small folk assembly, elected by guilds, to levy city taxes. A novelty, shaking pillars of inherited whims. She presented draft to council. Lords sputtered. Olenna smirked. A wolf invents democracy. Wonders never cease. High Sparrow smiled thinly. Debate raged, but seeds planted. Winter's first true storm struck the capital in mid-month. Sleet lashed ramparts, white sheets hushed rooftops. Fires burned bright in poor fellows' shanties. Wolves howled again, sounding nearer. In the courtyard, Arya caught flakes on her tongue, laughing, while southern nobles shivered under furs purchased at exorbitant rates from opportunistic northern traders. Snow in King's Landing. Omen of Wolf Queen's reign, poets said. Lyanna remained vigilant. She still wore mail beneath surcoat, still slept with Ice's daughter by bed. She had taken no hostage in marriage, though rumors paired her daily, with Jaime, with Prince Quentyn, with Lord Gendry, bastard of Baratheon, but hammered into lord by public love. She dismissed each politely. My vows are to the realm. Yet she missed Winterfell. The hush of Godswood under Aurora. The heavy scent of hot bread from old Nan's oven. Letters could not paint the soft glow of hearth fires. One dawn she stood on balcony, snowflakes swirling, and whispered, "Soon home." But duty anchored her. Trouble came from unexpected quarter, the Citadel. Archmaesters protested relief funds diverted to craft new dragonglass forges at Rook's Rest. They argued such alchemy unsanctioned. Lyanna invited them to King's Landing. They arrived with pomp, lecturing. She invited them to flea-riddled infirmary where children coughed, their silken robes wrinkled under stench. Theory saves none, she said. They relented, offering scribes. Alliances built on truth witnessed. Jaime proved loyal. At dusk he drilled new Kingsguard, now Queensward. 7 knights sworn not to Lyanna but to Realm's charter. Their white cloaks crisp. Among them stood Brienne of Tarth, towering sentinel. When first presented, she knelt, blue eyes shining. Lyanna lifted her, saying, "Stand. The realm needs tall towers." Brienne swore to shield girls from harm, tears gleaming. Jaime watched with quiet pride. Old redemption flickered. One midnight, Varys appeared in Lyanna's chamber unannounced. A phantom clothed in shadows. Guards found no sign of entry. He bowed. Your Grace, Protector, whichever title comforts. Spiders spin to keep webs intact. Darker players scheme to snap strands. He delivered names. Tyrell cousin plotting to crown baby Renly clone. Septon extremist forging crowns of thorns. Ironborn envoy bribing faith to preach salt way. He offered evidence. Lyanna studied, feeling weight of debts to a man who served realm or self. She accepted knowledge, but withheld promises. Varys bowed, glide silent into gloom. Days passed measured by tasks, forging new law, dispatching grain wagons, hearing grievance petitions. Yet in every shadow lurked winter. Then a raven arrived, the wall abandoned, rangers missing, vengeance dark gone north of Shadow Tower. Lyanna's chest constricted. She convened council emergency. Some scoffed, wildling skirmish. But Maester Myrick read scroll of ancient lore, quoting tales of cold dead kings. The hall chilled despite roaring hearth. Lyanna decided. Send a delegation north to investigate, led by Sir Brynden Tully with wildling translator, dragonglass weapons, ravens tethered. She offered to lead herself. The council protested. Arya volunteered, eyes alight. Lyanna forbade. War might ignite south if she left. She watched Brynden ride out through winter dawn, cloak snapping. Winter's pace quickened. Ice-crusted black water. Dire fleet forced to anchor. Sea battles paused. Snow blanketed rooftops. Fires burned bright in every hearth, but hunger prowled. Lyanna ordered coin minted, silver direwolves, paying artisans double for carvings. She funded soup halls, employing manderly cooks. The small folk called her Snow Mother. Opposition scoffed at coin devaluation, but dinner satisfied louder than fear. Kevin Lannister wrote from the Rock, gold mines reopened sooner than expected. Tribute offered if realm recognized Lannister autonomy. Lyanna replied, autonomy given under charter, but taxes due. She invited him to sign pact. He refused, but politely. War receded further. From the Reach came Lady Olenna's secret note. Marjorie pregnant with twins by Willis, planning coronation of a honeyflower monarchy behind closed doors. Olenna proposed alliance, Tyrell support for charter if Stark blessing legitimized her grandchildren as heirs to theoretical future wreath crown. Political marriage? No, Lyanna countered. Their bloodline may rule their lands, but not throne. Olenna accepted compromise. She wanted security, not crown. Treaty sealed with golden rose, stamped on parchment. Midwinter's Eve, a comet flared across sky. Pale blue, tail shimmering like ice shards. Some whispered, it marked return of dragons. Others, ascendancy of wolf. Lyanna stood on ramparts, watching. Snow kissed her cheeks, melted like tears. Then, deep in night, horns sounded at Dragon Gate. A rider, half frozen, collapsed before guards, clutching severed hand blackened with frostbite. Brynden Squire, eyes wild. The wall fell open, black shadows, dead walk. Panic rippled. They carried him to Maester Myrick. He died before dawn, lips forming single word, death. Council convened at once. Proof in severed hand. Flesh cold yet not decaying, fingers tipped with ice crystals. High Sparrow fainted, Tycho Nestoris whitened. Lyanna commanded dragonglass stockpiles readied. Steel forged with obsidian edge. She dispatched ravens. Call banners across realm, north and south, iron and rose. Charter's test had come. Eddard marched from Harrenhal with 20,000. Reach knights rode north under Garland Tyrell, wagons laden with grain and seed. Dornish light horse poured from Prince's Pass. Even Greyjoy longships sailed, Euron's hold fracturing as captains deserted for promise of honorable war. 7 kingdoms found single purpose, to face the night, but unity fragile. In the Red Keep Hall, Lyanna knelt before open hearth, maps spread. She plotted supply lines, engineer teams to build trebuchets that fired dragonglass jars. Jaime advised on fortifications, Brienne on shield walls, Roderick on sea lanes, Varys on morale. She wrote message to Jon Snow, Lord Commander. Yet Raven returned days later unsent, Eastwatch abandoned. One final council session. She relinquished Protector Seal to a regency triad, High Sparrow, Tycho, and Olenna. To govern capital, she would ride north. Protest erupted. She silenced with raised palm. A Stark must shield the realm. I am that Stark. At dawn, she rode through Liongate, flanked by Queensward. Jaime, Brienne, Bronze Yohn, Arya snuck between columns until Lyanna relented, scolding, then hugging. Dire Fleet's banners rippled along docks. Army columns stretched beyond city fields, torches flickering like river of stars under gray sky. As hooves clopped over frost-hardened earth, Lyanna glimpsed Red Keep receding, towers lost in swirling snow. She felt no fear, only clarity. A duel unfinished now scaled to war for dawn. Cersei's threat ended. Greater shadow rose. But realm traveled behind her, hearts ignited by hope. Northward they rode, under Comet's pale blaze. Winter wolves would howl across fields once tilled. Swords would clash against night, and somewhere beyond Shattered Wall, Benjen searched. Lyanna whispered vow. Fine brother, guard living, shatter death's cold crown. The first flakes thickened to blizzard, cloaking world white. In that hush, hooves fell silent, banners stilled, breath steaming. Lyanna lifted Ice's daughter toward gray sky, blade catching faint starlight. She thought of Hearttree's tears, of Cersei's ashes swirling over Blackwater, of new charters ink drying, of children warm with soup. She spoke to wind. We ride, and winter rides with us. But we carry spring inside. And the army moved, a river of wolves and lions and roses and suns. Banners entwined like skeins of fate, forging onward into a night wider than history, toward a dawn no song yet dared imagine. Ka. Ka. Pale moonlight lay across the King's Road, like spilled quicksilver, gilding every stone and root in ghostly sheen. Snow fell in whispering curtains, softening hoofbeats and shrouding the vanguard's torches until each flame seemed a lone firefly drifting through a dream. Lyanna rode at the column's head, cloak drawn high against the gathering storm, her breaths plume-white before her. Though the hammer of war pounded ever nearer behind the veil of night, the hushed world ahead felt caught between heartbeats, as though all creation waited to see what shape the North, and the realm, might claim beneath the Common's wan glow. At her side, Jaime Lannister guided a rangy gray courser, male silent under a padded half-cloak of direwolf gray. Brienne of Tarth flanked the opposite side astride her massive destrier, Oathkeeper sheathed across her back. Arya flashed in and out of view behind the lines, slipping from hitch to hitch like a shadow, curious and fearless. The rest of the Queensward and the leading banners of Manderley, Royce, Tyrell, and Dorne stretched back along the road in ragged serpentine, torches bobbing, hooves crunching. Farther yet trailed supply wagons, grain blacksmith forges on wheels, barrels of obsidian and arrowheads clinking softly. 3 nights ago they had ridden through the riverlands, while thin ice crusted still ponds and bare willows cracked under hoarfrost. Lord Edmure's remaining folk had cheered their passing. Many took up spears fashioned from farm tools and joined the march. Every mile northward seemed to draw in more souls. Hedge knights, sworn swords seeking new oaths, small folk clutching faith in a cause larger than hunger. The passing host fed them as best they could, but already wagons ran lean. Scouts hunted thin game in frosted dells, and Tyrell herbalists brewed nettle broth to stretch rations. Winter's hand tightened, yet hope's ember glowed. Lyanna guided her mare under a stone arch that once marked the southern reach of the neck. Fog pooled beneath the archway, coiling around horse legs like tame serpents. Beyond lay the causeway, a perilous ribbon of raised earth cutting through sour fens and sucking mires. Fires burned at intervals atop crude wooden platforms where outriders kept watch. Some platforms displayed drooping, salt-rotted kraken banners, prizes from skirmishes with ironborn reavers still infesting the neck. Scouts reported the enemy's last bastion at the ruins of Moat Cailin, the ancient fortress whose black basalt towers barred the throat of the realm. To reclaim the moat was to open Winterfell's gates and the lands beyond to the armies of the south. The column halted at the causeway's mouth, soldiers stamping feet for warmth. Snow pattered on shields like faint applause. Roderick Manderley rode forward, chin sunk into a fur collar, cheeks rosy beneath wind-burn. Moat Caelin's ramparts glow with watchfires, he reported. Ironborn still hold the towers, but their numbers thin. Scouts saw fewer than 200. 200 can delay 20,000 if the causeway remains narrow, Jaime muttered, eyes narrowing beneath hood. Brienne nodded. The ground on either side swallows horse and man alike. Attacking across the causeway only invites arrows. Lyanna considered the fenland stretching out from the raised road. Moonlit pools reflecting star shards. Tufts of stiff grass quivering beneath frost. Legend said the children of the forest sang spells here to drown armies of the first men. Even now the land seemed to whisper. She turned to Arya, who had ridden up, cheeks flushed. Sister, how many days' ride to Greywater? Greywater moves. Arya answered with a grin that flashed teeth. But Lord Reed promised to watch for the direwolf banners. Lyanna drew breath, letting cold settle clarity into her lungs. Then, we summon the Crannogman. She raised a hand. A courier wheeled his horse forward. Signal with 3 blue flares at first light. Reed's watchers will see. The courier saluted, galloping back down the column. Jaime frowned. Even if they answer, how can mire dwellers breach stone towers? Lyanna smiled, a curve thin as blade edge. The moat is stone, but its defense is water and mud. None know that better than the Crannogman. She nudged her mare ahead. Make camp. Fires low. At dawn we move only when the land itself fights with us. Tents sprouted like frost bloom along the causeway verge, canvas edges weighted with stones to keep them from blowing into fens. Soldiers huddled in cloaks, passing flasks of cherry spirit, singing hushed songs of home. Quartermasters allotted oat cakes and sausage, each portion precious. Lyanna refused officers' pavilion, choosing a simple tent with bedroll like her men. Inside, candles flickered gold around rough maps. She traced finger along the neck, imagining water levels, mud depths, hidden runnels. The rhythm of rain on canvas lulled her into half-sleep, punctuated by visions. Towers collapsing into black mire, blue-eyed whites stalking reed outcrops, wolves racing through cattails. She woke before dawn, air inside tent biting. Outside, campfires glowed dim red beneath gray pre-dawn, thick with snow dust. She strapped on mail, cinched breastplate, donned wolf-skin cloak. Beyond the lines, a hush cloaked the marsh like prayer. Then, quiet whistle overhead, followed by soft pop. A bloom of sapphire light blossomed against steel-gray clouds. First flare. Another followed, then the third, each marking compass points around Moat Caelin's silhouette. Blue sparks rained, painting snowdrifts cobalt. The signals to house Reed had been cast. Hours dragged. Soldiers performed maintenance, dozen paces off the causeway, each step tested by spear butt. The moat's tower squatted ahead, squat and foreboding, arrow slits dark. No banners flew atop the central tower. Ironborn arrogance had dwindled to caution. The wind shifted midday, carrying brackish reek mixed with peat smoke. A lone horn sounded from the east, melancholy trill echoing over marsh. Then another from west, lower, throaty. Thoros of Myr, newly appointed priest to the host, claimed it was twice the note his comrades had heard at the Trident, when Howland Reed saved Ned Stark from drowning. Lyanna's heart leapt. She signaled forward scouts to hold. Barely visible at first, figures emerged from reed beds, lean men clad in mottled greens and browns, half-faces painted with swamp mud. They moved like shades, bows half-drawn, spears tipped with obsidian. Among them rode a short man on a shaggy marsh pony, cloak patched with lizard lion scales. Howland Reed raised his hand, palm to sky. Lyanna rode to meet him on the causeway, Jaime and Brienne trailing. Lady Lyanna, Reed greeted, voice soft as marsh breeze yet carrying across water. The neck welcomes her wolf daughter home. Lyanna dismounted, offering arm. Moat Caelin's towers block the realm's blood flow. Will your people help us open the wounds? Reed's gaze drifted to black towers. Ironborn built no friendship with bogs or spirits. Last night we opened sluices cut centuries past. The waters rise beneath their walls even now. He pointed. Beneath basalt blocks, brackish waves lapped higher than morning tide. Jaime exhaled. Understanding dawned. They'll drown on their own ramparts. Reed's lips twitched. Or flee across causeway. Lyanna weighed risk. If they charge, they might break through our vanguard. Brienne shook head. Not if we tighten the throat. She gestured to hillocks along road's margin. Position scorpions there, crossfire. Lyanna nodded. Do it. She clasped Reed's hand. When towers fall, the path to Winterfell breathes again. The North will not forget. Dain. Reed dipped head, guiding his silent warriors back into reeds. By dusk high tide surged unnatural. Manderley sailors whispered of spirits pushing water. Moat Caelan's lower arrow slits flooded. Shadows moved atop battlements, torches bobbing in confusion. Loud clang of iron portcullis resounded as gates attempted to lower, too late. Water froth inside courtyard, dislodging ballista. Panic took hold. 3 longboats launched hastily, rowing along half-submerged curtain wall searching channel. Cranagman arrows rained, silent, lethal. One longboat caught fire, pitch-coated hull sparked by lantern arrow, flames licking water like hungry cats. Ironborn screams merged with hiss of steam. When twilight bled across clouds, a battered warhorn bellowed from the gatehouse. Surrender call, ragged. Lyanna gave order. Hold. She would not risk men until ground steadied. At full dark, with Moat Caelan half sunk and defenders clustered atop drowned gatehouse, she advanced under truce banner. The ironborn captain, hair slick with brine, knelt in water to his shins atop parapet and offered rusted helm. We yield the moat, Wolf Queen. Grant safe passage to Pike. No. Lyanna studied his gaunt face. You'll march east, hand over arms to Manderley fleet at White Harbor. Those who vow never again to raid Stark lands may return by ship. The rest will face northern justice. The captain spat swamp water, then nodded. Gates were unbarred, though nothing lay beyond but waist-deep flood. 3 hours later, torchlight flickered on ramparts flying the direwolf. Stone causeway widened where Moat Caelan sat. Ingress for armies once more opened. Engineers patched road segments, laying timber planks over soupy ruts. Lyanna's host passed through at dawn, rising sun painting frost-slick towers rose gold. Reed's people vanished as silently as they'd come. North of the moat, the air felt different. Crisp, pure, laced with pine resin. The land rolled gentle beneath open spruce woods, white caps of snow crowning each outcrop. Men breathed deeper, hearing wolves howl not as omen but greeting. Fires burned brighter at night, conversation warmer despite cold. Here the South's politics seemed remote. Only winter's test mattered. Yet winter unleashed new terrors. On the 4th night beyond Moat Caelan, outriders stumbled upon a hamlet gutted by unseen hand. Chimneys still smoked, clay ovens warm, goats frozen mid-step. No bodies, until they found them behind barn. Whole families stacked like cordwood, eyes rimed blue, limbs stiff, skin papery white. Marks like claws scored doors. In snow nearby, ragged footprints led north, luminous in moonlight. Jaime traced one print, jaw, tight, smaller there than man's. Children. Lyanna clenched fists. White walkers raised children too. She ordered fire pits dug. Bodies burned at dawn, smoke trailing like dark banners. Fear rippled down ranks. Thoros preached courage by Arlor's light, waving fire before anxious eyes. Northmen responded with silent prayers before weirwood tokens carved from burlap scraps. Lyanna moved tent to tent nightly, sharing stew, kindling laughter with simple stories of Winterfell harvest feasts. Hope fed bellies when food grew thin. A week later, Winterfell's watchfires winked on horizon, their glow defiant amid swirling snow. Columns approached through drifting veil, banners snapping. The gate stood open. Eddard Stark upon ramparts cloaked in sable, hair shot through with frost. When Lyanna rode beneath clattering portcullis, Brother descended stone steps 2 at a time, arms enfolding her as though she were still younger sister racing horses in Wolfswood. Tears rilled down his scarred cheek. "You bring half the realm," he whispered. "And all our hope," she replied, voice cracking. They convened war council in Winterfell's great hall, hearth's massive heart flames roaring. Robb Stark, taller now, clasped Lyanna's forearm with fierce pride. Sansa, summoned from Vale by Royce escort, embraced her, eyes shining from behind layers of calm. Bran, thin but alert, wheeled forward, three-eyed wisdom glimmering. Even Rickon, half-grown wildling lean, stood near Wargwolf Shaggy Dog, gaze fierce. The Starks were home. Eddard introduced northern chieftains. Lord Glover, stout and proud. Lady Mage Mormont, grizzled warrior matron. Wool clan chiefs smelling of pine tar. Timid churls from White Harbor, conscript ranks. They sat around oak-plank table, carved with Stark ancestry back to Bran the Builder. Candlelight shivered on their faces as Lyanna recounted Wall's fall. Brynden Tully, gaunt and road-worn, confirmed. Eastwatch no more. Tunnels gaped like wounds vomiting ice whites nightly. Bran interrupted, voice soft yet resonant. He told of visions. Armies of the dead sweeping quietly across freezing seas, crossing ice bridges to Bear Island, scaling Frost's slick cliffs. He spoke of the Night King's intent, not merely to extinguish life but memory itself. Silence fell. Older men crossed themselves. Lady Mormont spat into fire, curse trembling on lips. Lyanna produced dragonglass arrowheads, obsidian-edged swords forged at Rook's Rest. She laid them on table, black surfaces shimmering. "Every archer shall carry at least 6 shafts. Every spear tip shall bear shard. Maesters test iron obsidian alloy, splinters upon piercing. Even wights falter." Glover fingered an arrowhead, awe and fear mingled. Eddard spread new map. Snow-smudged parchment inked with red symbols. Wildling tribes loyal, castles abandoned, walker sightings. He pointed to Last Hearth, umber seat, circled in blue. Bryndon's scouts saw eerie lights there. No ravens since first snow. Lyanna's jaw tightened. Large house, strategic crossroad. If fallen, walkers could flank Winterfell. She resolved to march there. Before dawn, ravens carried call to arms. All able fighters muster Winterfell 3 days hence. Carpenter teams erected palisades along outer ward. Blacksmiths hammered dragonglass into spikes set in trenches. The castle became hive of war. Sansa orchestrated grain distribution, ration slips, clothing allowances, her ledger quill scratching late into night. Arya taught knives to washerwomen who volunteered as runners. Rickon drilled wolfpack of freed hounds to harry undead scents. Bran meditated in Godswood, eyes glazed, ravens roosting around his chair. Jaime trained with Winterfell garrison, his golden swordplay matched by Brienne's indomitable shield wall drilling. Manderley cooks produced fish stew hearty enough to fortify weary stomachs. Dornish pepperwine warmed nights. Tents multiplied outside walls until plains shimmered with campfires like starfields inverted. On second dusk, outrider from Dreadfort barreled through gate, face bloodless. Walkers, 5 leagues east, thin rear guard. Hundreds. Eddard convened quick council. Lyanna decided on swift strike. 1,000 mounted archers, dragonglass arrows, to test enemy strength. Delay approach while main host organized. Snow-laden wind whistled across Barrow Downs as column thundered forth under crescent moon. Lyanna rode front, arrow quiver clacking. Jaime to left, Lord Karstark to right. Far off, an eerie blue glow shimmered behind tree line. Lanterns of death. They dismounted, arranged horses behind ridge, advanced on foot through crunchy crust. Air smelled metallic, unnatural cold prickling skin. First whites emerged, gaunt swaying silhouettes, eyes phosphorescent. Lyanna signaled. A volley of obsidian-tipped arrows hissed skyward, black shafts disappearing into gloom. Impact. Quiet crackles burst of blue fire where arrowheads shattered in bone. Whites collapsed like puppet strings cut. Silence resumed. Then distant horn. mournful yet commands no living tongue. Pine branches shook though no breeze. From darkness filed more figures, 10, 20, then mass uncountable, ranks of shapes gleaned from centuries of graves. Anxiety rippled among archers. Lyanna loosed second volley. Undead ranks shuddered, but gap closed. She realized wights fell only to rise again, unless obsidian-pierced skull. Limbs severed still crawled. She ordered retreat to ridge, deploy flame traps. Jaime and Karstark held rear, swords slicing, obsidian shards sparking icy blood. Flames whooshed as pitch trenches lit, illuminating scene hellish. Undead pressing against fire barrier, some bursting into blue-laced flames, yet others strode through as frost-quenched embers hiss. Within their midst towered a tall, slender figure, pallid skin like cracked moonstone, eyes crystalline cruelty. The first White Walker she had seen alive. Its armored torso glimmered with rime. It raised spear of unknown ice, pointing. Fire guttered, wind howled, flames bent backward, extinguished by unnatural chill. Horror rippled. Lyanna knocked dragonglass-tipped arrow guided by instinct. She inhaled calm. The walker's gaze locked hers. She exhaled, released. Arrow whistled, slamming into creature's sternum. For an instant, arrow quivered. Then, shatter of crystal. The walker exploded into shards of frozen mist. Wights around it convulsed. Some collapsed inert, others staggered confused. The contingent's nerve broke. Undead tide faltered, parted. Opportunity. Lyanna ordered charge. Mounted archers remounted, galloped downslope, trampling prone wights, loosing arrows, point-blank got. Snow churned brown with earth and blackened shards. Within minutes, the necromantic spark flickered out. Field fell silent, save sputter of dying embers, hiss of snow on smolder. They had met the Night King's scouts, and survived. Casualties counted lost fingers to frost. Minor wounds, no deaths. Spirits soared. But message clear. White Walkers commanded winter itself. Only quick strikes and obsidian slain could stand. Back at Winterfell, Shears greeted returning vanguard, but soberness followed. Bran spoke that shattered walker merely pawn. Night King advanced behind endless dead. The first wave would strike last hearth within days. Lyanna decreed departure at dawn. Full host marched. Snow drove horizontal as army tramped north. Wolves shadowed flanks, their howls weaving with horns. Frozen rivers were crossed on newly cut ice bridges reinforced with pine trunks. Nights they camped under pale auroras that painted sky in spectral sheets. Watchers claimed faces swam in lights, ghosts of children urging courage. On the sixth morning, ridge above last hearth came into view, but keep itself looked wrong. No chimney smoke, no banners whip. As they crested slope, horror unveiled. Great Umber Long Hall, a jagged ruin of hoarfrost gate ripped off hinges, yard carpet white with snow, except for shape scrawled in blood. Spiral of severed limbs. Weirwood branches arranged around body of small boy pinned by blade of ice. The symbol of Night King, mocking. Men retched. Women wept. Lyanna knelt, closing boy's eyes. Bran stared blank, mind traveling distant. He whispered, "They ride for hearths of men to stoke fear. They burned a child. Spiral. Entire yard in pyre bright as dawn. Smoke ascending to heavy clouds. Scouts reported undead army less than 8 miles north, waiting in shadow of barren hills until night." Lyanna convened war council inside ruined hall's kitchen, air reeking of char and pine pitch. Stout tables turned to map racks, candles sputtered. She outlined defense. Archers behind palisade of wagons, dragonglass stakes angled outward. Shield wall behind, cavalry reserves flanking. Fire cauldrons hung overhead with quicklime and oil. Trebuchets loaded with pots of flaming obsidian shards soaked in wildfire. Courtesy of alchemists trusting her caution. "Archer must," Jaime gestured. "If Night King controls weather, he'll extinguish flame as before." "Wildfire burns even in water," Brienne answered. "Then pray snow is water enough." Jaime muttered. Evening purpled sky. Snow stilled. Unnatural silence descended. Torches stabbed gloom along palisade. Archers tested bowstrings. Horses snorted vapor. Lyanna walked lines, meeting each soldier's eyes, offering words, sometimes simple winter lives, sometimes longer memory of home hearths. Fear remained but no panic. Distant rumble like avalanche. Then, out of darkness, shapes, ranks upon ranks of whites, armor fused to flesh. Eyes blue pinpricks. In their fore strode white walkers, 9 visible, each bearing spear or sword of moonlit ice. At their center rode Night King atop dead giant elk, antlers caked frost. His gaze surveyed lines, expression blank, yet brimming malice. Battle began with silence broken by single horn, Manderley to mark volley. Hundreds of arrows surged, black streaks crossing in arcs. Whites toppled, apples of blue flame bursting tighter. But dead climbed over dead, pressing on. Trebuchets launched jars. Sky rained emerald fire, conflagrations roaring along ranks, yet cold wind swirled, dampening edges, leaving pockets extinguished where walkers gestured. At command, fire cauldrons tipped. Oil cascaded, ignited by torches. A wall of living flame. Whites shrieked. Some frozen mid-stride, charred. Again, Night King lifted palm. Sudden blizzard gusts swept, funnel of snow swirling, sucking heat until flames sputtered to guttering lumps. Horror spread as curtain of snow devoured line of sight, whites now inside perimeter. Shield wall closed. Brienne roared whole. Hairlords hammered shields. Undead crashed, claws scraping steel. Dragon glass edges sang, shattering bones in blue fire. Arya darted through gaps, daggers slitting tendons. Jaime guarded left, golden sword flicking. Lyanna fought at center. Ice's daughter gleamed in lightning flashes from burning jars. She smashed white helm, skull fracturing, pivoted, drove blade through another's chest. Obsidian shards burst. White collapsed. She moved like winter storm, breath clouds swirling. Then walkers entered gap. Frost aura freezing mud beneath feet. First slashed at Karstark. His sword shattered on contact. Walker's spear impaled his chest, killing instantly. Panic threatened. Lyanna hurled obsidian-tipped javelin. Walker parried. Frost humming. Jaime advanced. Oathkeeper clashing. Valyrian steel met ice, sparks glacial, yet blade held. Brienne joined, 2 blades wheeling against spear. Lyanna circled, drawing second javelin. Launched, strike to Walker's spine. It pierced, shivered. Walker crumpled into ice shatter, leaving spear half air. Men cheered, yet others fell. 2 more walkers bore down on center left. Wool clansmen swarmed, axes with dragonglass beadlines biting pale armor, eventually fracturing. Yet each victory costly. Night King watched, unhurried. He lifted both arms. The fallen, dead humans and whites alike, jerked, rose anew. Horror surged. Comrades once living, now blue-eyed fiends. Lines wavered. Bran, positioned on hill, cried out, gorging ravens that burst skyward. From vantage, he sought weakness. Lyanna knew stalemate meant doom. She spurred through chaos, reached Trebuchet Hill. She called to Manderley artillery chief. Ready black storms. Green jars replaced with heavier casks. They contained wildfire mixed with fine dragonglass dust. Risk unimaginable. Radius lethal to living as dead. Still, she signaled. Jaime saw plan. Blue horn 3 times. Retreat to second line. Troops disengaged. Dragged wounded, forming ring around hillock. Whites surged, unaware of doom. At mark, ropes cut. Casks hurled skyward, arching into dense mob. Upon impact, green explosion blossomed like demonic flower, rising column of emerald flame. Dragonglass flechettes, carried by updraft, shredded ranks, each speck igniting blue fire within white bodies. 3 overlapping bursts created inferno maelstrom. Even walkers staggered. Frost armor cracking under alchemical heat. Night King's elk reared, engulfed by flame. Yet rider remained, cloak sizzling, but intact. Silence after roar rang in ears. Thousands of whites lay litter, flames devouring. Surviving walkers, 9 reduced to 4. Others melted. Night King strode forward, cloak trailing cinders, spear of smoked ice forming anew in hand by sorcery. Lyanna faced him across scorched field, ash swirling like black snow. Jaime moved to flank, Brienne opposite. Bran's ravens circled overhead crying. Night King thrust spear. Ground erupted, icicles racing toward trio. They leapt aside, one spike-skewered horse burying beast. Lyanna rolled, came up running, Ice's daughter raised. She fainted low, cleaved high. Spear parried. Glacial shock numbed arm. Jaime's Valyrian blade struck from side. Night King twisted, catching strike with bare hand, sheathed in frost. Blade froze, nearly shattered. Jaime withdrew. Brienne hammered shield into Night King's back, shield rim cracked, but impact staggered him half-step. Lyanna seized moment, drove obsidian knife from boot straight at joint behind knee. Blade bit, Night King hissed, aura flickering. Crack traced along icy armor. He spun, backhand sending Lyanna flying. She hit ground breathless, blood-tasting copper. Night King advanced to finish, spear tip aimed at heart. Sudden blur. Wolf. Ghost lunged from shadows, jaws clamping Night King's calf. Frost erupted, but direwolf's white fur smoked, not yielding. Night King stumbled, spear wavered. Jaime slashed again, severing forearm at elbow. Frost arm shattered, spear falling. Brienne drove Valyrian steel straight through Night King's torso. Crack. Fissures spider-webbed icy chest. Lyanna rose, gripping Ice's daughter two-handed. She shouted ancient phrase of first men taught by Reed. Swung in massive arc. Sword cleaved Night King's neck. Head separated, crystal shards spraying azure light. In instant of shattering, whites across battlefield convulsed, collapsed. Remaining walkers exploded into hail of ice dust. Silence roared louder than battle. A hush, then thunderous cheers. Unbelieving cries, some weeping. Flames crackled. Snow hissed on embers. Ghost limped to Lyanna. Muzzle rhymed frost. She embraced him, tears steam. Yet Bran cried from hill, voice echoing across mind of ravens. Beware, shadows still move. Some whites twitched. Pockets persisted where Night King's power lingered. But command broken. Without walkers, dead became inert corpses. Archers finished stragglers. Priests anointed ground with fire. Dawn's pale band lightened eastern edge. Survivors stood exhausted yet alive, surveying field of desolation now quiet, except crackling flames. Lyanna gathered commanders near ruined hall steps. Casualties heavy, hundreds dead. But host remained. More importantly, Night King slain. Yet Bran warned not final. Others may rise in far wastes if hearts of men turn cold again. But for now, long night abated. They marched south 2 days to Winterfell, bearing news. Bells rang. Small folk danced despite grief. Scant food turned feast. Broth strong with hope. Maester Myrick penned ravens to every corner. Long night lifted. Wolf Queen leads dawn. Bam. In Godswood twilight, Lyanna knelt before Heart Tree, sap tears mirroring her own. She thanked old gods, new, unknown. Ned stood behind, resting hand on her shoulder. You changed realm, sister. She smiled faintly. We changed, she corrected. She rose, gazing at family. Arya sparring Sam Tarly. Sansa teaching children letters. Rickon combing ghosts' fur. Bran among roots sharing visions with saplings. Home lived. Weeks later, Triad Council traveled north. High Sparrow, Olenna, Tycho. To witness restoration. Charter of 7 ratified beneath sky, bright with early spring sun. Snow melted into trickling brooks. Crocus spears pierced thawing soil. They crowned Lyanna queen in the north and protector of realms of men by unanimous acclamation. But she kept crown locked humble, simple silver circlet. Jaime knelt as Queen's Guard Lord Commander, new white cloak, trimmed gray. Rhiannon assumed title Lady of Tarth and Shield of the Innocent. Houses pledged, coins minted with direwolf, and wheat stalk entwined. Euron's fleet, upon learning of Night King's fall, attempted last raid on White Harbor. Admiralty dire banner now seasoned. They crushed him in Battle of Shivering Bay. Euron captured, judgment pending. Greyjoy rebellion flickered out. Spring crept south, though fitful. Fields planted under guidance of Reach agronomists. Dorne shipped citrus to feed scurvy-weary soldiers. Tycho managed new treasury where taxes no longer lined pockets, but built roads, opened schools. Charter's small folk assembly met in Winter Town Hall, voices timid at first, then bold. Lyanna journeyed across realm, from Torrhen Square to Oldstones, listening, healing. She visited ruins of Septa Baelor where shattered stones now form community garden. She pardoned criminals conscripted by Lannisters, employing them to rebuild orphanages. She exchanged letters with Shireen Baratheon in Dragonstone, forging alliance of knowledge to craft dragonglass farms for future defense. 1 year after Long Night, they returned to Dragonpit in King's Landing, this time not for duel, but festival. Flower garlands draped broken arches, children laughed climbing Balerion's ribs, now polished into monument reminding all of power, harnessed not for fear, but memory. Lyanna stood upon dais where Iron Throne once presided. Now there rose carved weirwood chairs simple, unadorned. She addressed assembly of 7,000. "We learned winter's gift. Only together do we endure," she said. "Let forts be raised in hearts, not just walls. Let swords rust unused because justice blooms. And if night rises again, as it surely will, remember the spark we carried through storm." Cheers rose. Bells rang across city once again bright. As sun dipped, she wandered quiet alcove, where lemon tree from Redkeep Terrace had been replanted near broken wall, leaves vibrant. Jaime approached, offering single bloom. "A token of southern peace," he said. She accepted, inhaled scent. A mingling of sweet and tang. She tucked blossom behind ear, gaze sweeping horizon where red gold painted clouds. Night would fall, but not yet. Ghost padded near, Arya chasing after pup of Shaggy Dog and some mongrel, laughter trailing. Sansa strode with scroll of merchant treaties. Bran rolled through wildflowers guided by Hodor's gentle cousin. Ned and Catelyn, newly reunited after long years of ghostly ache, watched from bench cunningly carved with intertwining darewolves. Lyanna looked to broken skyline, to people's lanterns bobbing across twilight like galaxies mirrored on Earth. Her story had begun with single duel between wolf and lion, steel and pride. It had become symphony of blades and hope, forging dawn. She realized destiny was not crown, nor throne, but endless journey to guard flame inside hearts. She breathed, felt winter's chill turn gentle. Somewhere far north, beyond new watchtowers along rebuilt wall, ancient winds mourned lost ice sovereign, but they carried seeds of spring southward, scattering across fields of men rising from ash, guided by memory of courage. Lyanna Stark closed eyes, listening to quiet hum, heartbeat of realm knit from bone and dream. She smiled. Dawn belonged to all those who dared share its light, and the wolf would keep watch so none walked alone into night again. Dun dun dun. More style. The second spring after the long night rose trembling from an earth still bruised by frost, each dawn uncertain, as though the sun itself had not yet decided whether it truly wished to reclaim Westeros. On winds out of the west drifted the smell of wet loam, salt, and the faintest sweetness of budding apple blossoms. Fields that had been blackened by wildfire and trampled beneath the frozen iron of White Walker armies now shimmered with the first bold lances of green wheat. Calves tottered in barnyards where only ashes had lain, and children discovered once more that mud made better toys than fear. Yet beneath every heartbeat of peace quivered a memory of winter's claw, as if the realm itself waited for steel against throat again. Lyanna Stark rose before that fragile sunrise, padding barefoot across the chilly flagstones of the new Godswood Pavilion, its eaves woven from young heartwood and the pale timber of shipwrecked masts. Her breath plumed, turned rosy in infant light. She knelt beside the sapling heart tree transplanted from Winterfell. Only a slender white trunk, no thicker than a child's arm, but its leaves already crimson as old blood against snow. She touched the bark with 3 fingers. Sap trembled beneath living skin, and in its restless pulse, she felt the realm's demands as vividly as the throb of her own arteries. Behind her, the pavilion's delicate wind chimes whispered, beaten silver crescents gifted by the Rhoynar artisans of Sunspear, their tones mingling with the ripple of courtyard fountains. Jaime emerged from the adjoining walkway, white cloak billowing behind plain gray tunic, armor unused this morning, save for the ceremonial wolf's head pin that clasped the mantle over his collarbone. Over the last 2 years, gray had replaced crimson in his palette, but the gold of his hair still blazed like captured midday. He stopped a respectful distance away, arms folded, gaze soft. "There are ravens," he said quietly. Tico's delegates from Bravos arrived at Sealskin Quay a day earlier than expected, and the Iron Bank requests an audience before the first session of the People's Assembly. Lyanna breathed the chill, straightened and rose, and the docks, full of curiosity and fear in equal measure. The Bravosi disembarked with chests of ledgers and guards clad in silver-lacquered brigandines. They asked for white rooms, not gold. "No, monsieur." She managed a wry smile. "At least they know whose colors to wear now." She took the cloak he held ready, faded wolf gray trimmed in subtle white fur saved from the first snows after the war, and clasped it around her shoulders. Together they walked down a corridor of freshly carved marble that replaced the gutted passageways of old Maegor's Holdfast. Sunlight shot through tall windows and lit moats swirling like sparks from 1,000 hearths. King's Landing, or Queen's Landing, as lampoons had started calling it, was a city still knitting itself together. From the great windows, they glimpsed cranes of black pine hoisting carved stone lintels above the new harbor gate. Half-built colonnades studded the skyline where charred ruins had been swept away. The Tyrell masons had laid out expansive colonnades leading to the Exchange Square, modeled after Old Town's River Row. Dornish stonemasons ringed the facades with delicate traceries. And there upon the highest plinth where the Red Keep's old threat had loomed now, stood no iron throne. Only a wide circular dais paved with granite, empty save for a pair of crossing flagpoles. One bearing a direwolf rampant upon silver, the other a simple hogshead seal representing the Assembly of the Commons. For the 3rd time that month, the full Charter Council would convene. Lyanna knew this session would be harsher than any battle. Numbers and parchment could wound deeper than ice. While the undead had been single-minded, the living were quarrelsome. Reports from the north promised healthy plantings, but drought pricked at Sarsfield, and river pirates harassed grain barges along the Mander despite Lord Tarley's patrols. Across the Sunset Sea, captains arriving from Lys reported Volantine Red priests, preaching that a Wolf Queen's defiance of the flames denied Azor Ahai's return. They threatened pilgrimage fleets to redeem Westeros. Closer to home, storms battered the stepstones, scattering shipping lanes and funneling displaced Lysine corsairs toward the Blackwater. The fields of men were alive but tender. In the vaulted antechamber outside the Assembly's chamber, Olenna Tyrell waited, leaning upon her carved cane, shawl of seafoam green fluttering like rebellious banners about her thin shoulders. 2 younger Tyrell cousins stood behind, wearing mantles heavy with signature golden roses. The Dame of Highgarden's smile was as sharp as ever. "Ah, here she strides, her wintry majestic reluctance." Her eyes darted to Jaime, mischief twinkling. "And her golden wolfhound in tow. Has he fetched the Bravosi yet?" "He has fetched courtesy," Jaime replied, dipping an elegant bow. "One day I may fetch roses as well, if the Reach behaves." "The Reach always behaves," Olenna said. "Just not in ways your northerners expect." Lyanna intervened with a half-bow. "Lady Olenna, I am grateful you came early. The Iron Bank will push hard on collateral. Your harvest forecasts may decide whether we secure extension." "Oh, they'll grant it. They would rather lend to optimists rebuilding a continent than wring blood from dead kingdoms." Olenna's gaze sharpened. "But they will look for weakness. Do not blink." She tapped Cain. The ash-seers of Volantis talk loud but carry nothing yet. The bank knows this. They proceeded into the assembly hall. Once the great hall where the Iron Throne ruled. Rebuilt into a circular arena. Tiered benches for lords and ladies, flanked broader wooden galleries for elected trade guild masters, freeholders, and sept representatives. At the center lay a low dais of weirwood veined marble, ringed by 7 braziers lit with mild pine fires. The only symbolic nod left to both 7 and old gods. No single gilded seat presided. Instead, 3 broad benches formed a triangle. One reserved for the protector of the realms, one for the Council of Lords paramount, and one for the Commons Assembly speaker. Already the galleries buzzed. Murmurs in a dozen dialects. The shuffle of sealskin-booted Northmen, the stomping polished sandals of coastal traders, the shimmering rustle of silks worn by new money from the free cities who had taken Westerosi brides and husbands during the war's uncertain nights. Catelyn Stark, spared by the Lord of Light's ambiguous mercy and restored by both science and singer's craft, sat among the Riverlands delegation, quiet strength warming her gaze as she watched her newly united brood find their roles. Arya, dressed in subdued leathers heavier with status than armor, hung by the Commons bench like moonlight pinned to stone. Neither noble nor guildsman, but welcome by sheer renown. Rumors told that she'd slain a second White Walker with a needle-slender dragonglass rapier, somewhere near the Lonely Hills. Bran's chair waited near Maester Dais, though the boy, now young man, rarely remained behind fleshly eyes during such events. In the highest alcove stood Varys, silent, hairless head nodding faintly, as though he alone could hear winds from every window. Lyanna took her place at the Protector's bench. Murmurs quieted. A heavy walnut gavel, carved into a wolf's paw, was lifted by Speaker Michelle of Gulltown. Once a fishmonger, now chosen in landslide by the Dockworkers Guild to sit for the Commons. He struck the dais. The 12th convocation of the Great Charter convenes. Let grievances and petitions be presented without blood or fear. Name? First rose Tycho Nestorus envoy. Slim woman named Miriat San, rumored daughter to the bold Celestial Salator. She wore austere Bravosi gray, no jewelry beyond a thin steel choker etched with keys, the Iron Bank's sign. She recited figures. 8 million golden dragons still owed post-war reconstruction. Interest recalculated due to earlier repayment. The bank's willingness to extend credit for harbor dredging if certain collateral shifted from dragonglass mines to amber deposits on the arbor. Lords rustled. Tyrell delegates bristled. The arbor's Lady Layla Redwine narrowed her brows. Lyanna answered calmly. The arbor's amber belonged to its people, but the North could pledge 20% of silver drawn from Coldwater mines, guaranteeing shipments already secured by Manderley merchants. Miriat parried. They required quarterly disbursements to guarantee liquidity. Bran's maester, young Hobart, produced ledgers showing winter sea lanes reopened, reducing risk. It became a dance of numbers and reputations. Olenna added a barb, noting quietly that if Bravos required additional surety, it might invest directly in new shipyards at Old Town, thus profiting twice. Miriat San bowed. Surety accepted. Only then did the assembly turn to the trial of Euron Greyjoy. 2 years had not softened his mad smile. Shackled in black iron, hair wild, eye patch polished as freshly spilled ink, he was escorted by twin ranks of Manderley spearmen, all gaunt from winter but eager. The hall hushed, whispers like dry reeds. Euron's gaze wandered across tiered seats, amusement dancing as though he still commanded storms by whim. He was charged with piracy, enslavement, burning of the Citadel Star Observatory, unleashing ancient blood magic upon the Arbor Vineyards, and more. Jaime recited charges with crisp efficiency. When asked for plea, Euron only laughed. I plead the sea, and the sea takes what she is owed. The Commons roared in outrage. Lords demanded order. Lyanna stood, voice a calm blade. Westeros will no longer burn for madmen's boasts. She decreed that by the Charter, piracy equated to war against all free folk. Euron was to face judgment by a jury of 7, drawn from each of the realm's principal coasts. The Queen's Guard would escort the proceedings aboard the rebuilt Silence itself, now anchored in the Blackwater as grim stage. Euron's smile faltered for first time. Not fear, but curiosity. A floating gallows, Wolf Queen? You learn spectacle from Cersei's ashes. I learn accountability, she replied. The trial would begin soon, but not yet this day. The assembly shifted to other matters. Lord Aelin Hunter petitioned for funds to rebuild river sluices upstream of River Run. Dornish envoys requested coastal watchtowers along the Broken Arm. Merchants from Lys sought license to import lime for making mortar. The maesters argued about fate of dragon skulls hidden in Red Keep cellar. Lyanna steered each debate, sometimes deferring to committee, sometimes wielding authority. The session lasted until sun's amber touched high windows. Only when Speaker Michel struck gavel thrice did the assembly adjourn. Voices fall into low chatter. Lyanna retreated to the small solar that had once been J. Harry's chart room, now converted to council lounge. The walls, recently repainted, bore frescoes of a dire wolf surrounded by intertwined wheat and oak, broken chains at its paws. A red-hot brazier warmed the space. There, she found Sansa engrossed in parchment maps of the Crownlands. Her auburn hair was coiled beneath a silk snood embroidered with small cranes. Sigil of the Port Reclamation Corps, she directed. She looked up, eyes bright. We secured the River Engineers Guild's vote. They'll divert barges to the newly dredged channel west of Maidenpool. That halves the grain's journey by 2 days. Lyanna smiled, lines around her eyes hinting at where. You run these ledgers like a maester. Like a queen, perhaps. Sansa teased gently. Yet now we have 2, and the younger one refuses her throne. Let's not dig up crowns, Lyanna murmured, gazing out window at sunset, bleeding into Blackwater Bay. She sensed Jaime's presence behind, quiet sentinel, but Sansa pressed. Low voice coaxing as only sisters can. The commons love you. The lords mostly tolerate. The realm's hearts need one symbol, not 2 benches. Sit the granite seat in the assembly. Let them call you queen outright. Lyanna combed fingers through raven-dark hair streaked now with frost silver. Symbols matter, but duty matters more. If I become monarch, we risk sliding back to old idolatry. The charter must stand above one house. Sansa studied her, then nodded. Then marry. Give them continuity. She glanced meaningfully at Jaime. Lyanna's pulse fluttered. Jaime shifted weight but said nothing. His vow to Queensguard forbade fathering heirs, yet monarchy itself was questioned. Could realm accept marriage when crown remained vacant? The speculation drained strength. A knock ended discussion. Arya entered, cheeks wind-burnt. The trial barge is ready. Euron sails at moonrise. Her grin flashed white. I want front rail. When Sansa frowned, Arya shrugged. I promised Jojen's memory to watch Kraken hang. They crossed courtyard to River Pier behind the Red Keep. Torches illuminated Black Hull of Silence, now rechristened Atonement. Dragonglass flakes embedded in its prow sparkled star blue. Chains clinked as Euron was hauled up gangplank. He flung head back, sniffed air like wine. I smell prophecy, he drawled. Who among you heard the storm god cry when I took his eye? Jaime prodded him with spear. Arya smirked. Brienne stood near mast, impassive. Lyanna watched crew cast off lines. The barge drifted into black, tethered by 2 longboats bearing braziers. Hundreds lined quays and battlements. Silent. On deck, a circle of benches held jurors. Lord Redwine for the Arbor, Lady Valerian for Driftmark, a Lysene trader, a Crannogman captain, a Dornish corsair of House Jourdain, a Broadwasey harbor master, and Roderick Manderley. Euron refused counsel. The proceedings unfolded under cold moon. Deposition of maesters, sworn accounts of salt wives rescued, testimony of warship captains who lost kin. Euron interrupted, often with laughter, singing half-forgotten verses in tongues none recognized. Stars wheel overhead. The tide sloshed. At last Lyanna approached prisoner, torch casting amber across her features. Euron Greyjoy, The realm finds you guilty." He leaned forward, chains rattling. "Realm. You speak as though you've tamed the sea. But the sea has no realm. The sea now has law." She drew small iron keyblade, Valyrian steel dagger tempered in dragonglass dust, gift from Corran. She sliced his bonds, leaving wrist manacles intact. "By charter, condemned may choose death of sky or death of sea." Euron smiled wide. "I take the waves, of course." They led him to prow where plank jutted above black water. Wind whipped his long coat. Without hesitation he stepped out, balancing as if on a church spire. He faced Moon, arms wide. "Tell the drowned god Euron crowns him." He tipped backward, vanished into dark. Waves swallowed with muffled splash. Chains dragged him deep. Silence, except hiss of tide. Jurors murmured prayers. Arya exhaled, satisfaction tempered by memory of those lost. The barge returned. On dock, lanterns threw crisscross lattices upon water. Lyanna dismissed guard, walked onto jetty alone, staring where ripples flattened. Was this justice? Death ended breath but not scars. Yet ashes fed soil. Something new would grow. Back in Solar near dawn, she found Bran waiting, eyes elder than dawn. "Sister," he spoke, voice both boy and wind, rustling snow-laden pines. Threads tug from east. A shadow with tongues of flame crosses narrow sea. "Volantis?" she asked. He shook head. "Beyond. A city of broken chains seeks banner, and they look to wolves and dragons alike." His gaze unfocused. "I have seen a prow carved in stone, bearing three-headed wolf, sailing into dawn." Lyanna's brow furrowed. Dream or warning? Perhaps both. But first, rebuild nest before flight. He smiled faintly. Roots, then wings. Those words settled seeds in her mind. She slept little, dreaming of stone ships gliding across sunlit water toward shores she had never seen. Summer came early that year. The small folk called it Wolf Summer. Short, bright, forgiving. Olive branches pushed pale shoots on the crags of Storm's End. Lemon trees flowered along the black water again. Yet the memory of hunger remained. And so Lyanna declared a day of seed. In every hamlet from Flint Cliffs to the Arbor, bells rang, and people gathered soil in palms before planting beans, barley, rye, and riverlings. She traveled incognito, riding through wheat fields with only Arya and Ghost. They shared bread with millers whose grain silos had become watchtowers during the long night. Children chased Ghost Tail. Parents wept quietly as the queen loaded baskets with unsmoked fish and coin. In Highgarden's Golden Grove, she met Garth Tyrell, newborn son of Willis and Margaery, two tiny fists waving as though commanding bees. In Iron Islands, she addressed Moot at Naga's Bones, where Asha presented her bold petition to lead Isles into peaceful trade confederation, forging iron not into swords but plows for Reek Islands. The assembly roared their blessing. Sea winds carried new songs across shoals. At year's end, the first general elections for the Commons Assembly unfurled. From dusty gold fields of Lannisport to white alleyways of Gulltown, freeholders and guilds appointed delegates. Many ran unopposed, some contested fiercely, but no swords drawn. The realm held its breath. And when results posted upon parchment at city squares, bells pealed again. There were cheers, but no riots. A system born amid blizzard now withstood gentle rain. Tycho Nestoris penned letter praising remarkable fiscal maturity, hinting of reduced interest if stability lasted another season. Lyanna realized Sansa's earlier counsel. State needed continuity beyond her. She convened secret council with Starks and close allies. Under lantern light, they debated weeks. Some urged marriage with Jaime. He stood silent sentinel, refusing to be center. Bran counseled, let River choose its own bed. In end, Lyanna drafted Covey of Regents. Should she fall, Crown, if revived, would pass to Council of 7, 1 Stark, 1 River, 1 Reach, 1 Vale, 1 Dorne, 1 Westerlands, 1 Commons speaker. It required every house to invest in peace. She sealed pacts, scribes backed in iron. She then addressed Jaime privately beneath starlit sky near Lemon Tree. They spoke of vows, love carved between wars, scars deeper than blade can reach. He confessed desire for family, but not at price of bloodline claims. She kissed him. Answer enough. In months following, rumors of quiet handfasting circulated, no pomp. Only small ceremony before Hearttree in Winterfell, with siblings as witness. Jaime, having formally renounced titles, took oath as consort protector, not king. Many found arrangement unnerving, others inspiring. A sword guided by loyalty rather than birth. 2 autumns later, Bran's earlier vision ripened. Envoys from Far East reached Gulltown. Ragged freedmen led by women with serpent tattoos across shoulders. They spoke Hiskari accented with vulgar Valyrian. Their city, Nisar, formerly slave port under Yonkai's lash, now self-ruled but besieged by Volantine triarchs. They offered alliance, huge stores of coffee beans, silk and emeralds in exchange for dragonglass and guarantee of defensive fleet. Faces of council tightened at notion of extending obligations across world. Yet trade routes meant prosperity. Ignoring might invite triarchy to grow. Lyanna traveled to sea again, riding aboard Stormwolf, once Euron's captured flagship. Amy commanded escort of 4 dire banner carvels. They crossed the narrow sea, skirted Volantis's watchful galleys, sailed south of Valyrian Peninsula, whose smoking ruins still whispered curses. At Nizar's lagoon, they saw what Bran had glimpsed. Harbor carved in basalt shaped like prow of colossal wolf. Local legend told ancient first men settled centuries earlier. Freedmen knelt when wolves arrived. They saw omen. In Council Hall of marble colonnades, Lyanna forged the Wolf Treaty. An exchange of goods, joint patrols against slavers, establishment of a bard's college to preserve stories of liberation in every tongue. She left small garrison of Northmen and Manderly sailors. Volunteers, not conquerors. On return voyage, they rescued boat of Volantine dissidents fleeing religious persecution. Among them, a red priest named Varys Sod, who believed the long night ended not by flame, but union of ice and fire within hearts of men. He pledged to preach peace, not conquest. Many still feared heresy, yet Lyanna invited him to court as scholar. Some Septons objected, but High Sparrow, older and slower, nodded, recognizing necessity to share pulpit. Peace did not mean rest. Raiders attempting to revive Golden Company ravaged stepstones. Smallpox outbreak in White Harbor forced quarantine. Sudden eruption of Dragonmont threatened smoke across Crownlands. Each crisis tested Council's ability, yet each time, houses cooperated. Manderleys shared salted cod, Tyrells dispatched healers, Valyrian galleys raced to evacuate Dragonstone's villagers. The realm wove web of mutual debt by compassion, rather than fear. Years rolled onward. Children born during long night grew into apprentices forging new plows from melted swords. The last dragonglass shards left armory shelves, replaced by plowshares with black gleam, reminder of vigilance. Over time, folk spoke less of whites and more of harvest yields, trade fairs, festivals. At Winterfell's rebuilt library, Samwell Tarly cataloged thousands of scrolls saved from Citadel's fire, adding volumes recounting Wolves' summer. He named collection the Chronicle of Dawn. Yet on 20th anniversary of Battle of Last Hearth, a different chill returned. A massive raven, as black as void, arrived at the Hall of Records, its message written in cramped, spidery symbols known only to few. Code of Faceless Men. Varys deciphered. Contract upon life of Protector, signed by unknown Free City Coalition. Coin heft equal to price once placed on King Robert. He warned quietly. Lyanna summoned small council in secret. Discussion hushed. Jaime insisted Queensguard doubled. Arya volunteered to infiltrate Braavos, learn truth. Bran's distant eyes saw tunnels of possibilities. One in which knife found throat, empire crumbled, another where compassion disarmed assassin. Which thread would they weave? Not even he knew. Lyanna decided symbol, stronger than blade. She scheduled journey to Bravos at Festival of Titans Wake. Public, open dining. Against council, she would walk canals among coin magisters, flanked not by swords but by singers, showing no fear. Night before departure, she stood again before Heart Tree of Red Keep, trunk now thick enough to cradle her palm. She whispered, "The realm must outlive me." Jaime found her there, brushed snow from cloak. She turned, surveyed city. Towers of white marble, docks filled with sails of many shapes, laughter drifting, no longer fuel for ironic songs but genuine. She knew risk, but peace demanded courage. At dawn, her ship slipped beneath massive shadow of Bravoside Tainter. Bells boomed salute. Citizens lined canals, curious. She disembarked wearing simple gray dress. Faceless men watched from bridges, perhaps at opportunity but not strike. She visited Iron Bank, reaffirmed credit. She donated chest of silver wolves to Collegia of orphans. At Sea Lord's Palace, she spoke of webs of trade stronger than chains. On final night, walking alone through Moonpool Garden, she felt presence. Figure cloaked in dove gray stepping from shadow, blade glinting. She did not reach for sword, none buckled. She met assassin's hollow gaze behind porcelain mask. Many-faced God will's debt be paid, the assassin whispered. And what debt is greater, she answered, than life given that many may live? She opened palms, offering throat. Assassin hesitated, blade trembling. Mask shifted, eyes not empty but glossy with tears. You would die so readily? For them, yes. But if you spare me, you also choose life over coin. Whose face will your God wear then? She asked. Hand shook, blade lowered. Masked, head bowed. Assassin melted back into shadows of cypress. She exhaled. Back on deck next day, she confided in Jaime. He grasped her hands. Bravery and madness share bed. Sometimes realm needs both, she replied. Ravens later reported, contract rescinded, sponsors withdrew. Some say moved by rumors of Queen's calm before death itself. Others insisted Bravosi respect those who show fearless grace. Either way, threat abated. Decades flowed like quiet river. Storms came, storms passed. Agriculture thrived. Trade routes extended to Nysar, Ashai, Stepstone's freeports under joint charter patrols. The People's Assembly revised laws, property rights balanced by stewardship, education funded for small folk. Maesters produced treatise, linking dragon glass, molecular lattice to protective qualities, foundation of early chemical science. Children grew without memory of crown wrought from swords. In twilight of her rule, Lyanna stood once more in God's Wood of Winterfell. The sapling from King's Landing had been replanted here, towering now, its face timid but wise. Snowflakes dusted her streaked hair. Jaime, older, eyes lined, still upright, laid hand on her shoulder. They watched Bran greeting students of New Warg Academy, Arya teaching sword forms to novices, Sansa dictating letter to Nysar regarding looming locust blight, Rickon training Greathhounds for border patrols. Ghost, scar-muzzled yet vibrant, slept beneath boughs. Lyanna closed eyes, listening to Heart Tree's slow pulse. She had bled for this hush, sacrificed rage, renounced crown. In turn, she had been given a realm singing not of perfect peace, but earnest striving. Imperfect, blemished, human. And that, she decided, was dawn enough. Snow thickened, muffling world to near silence, until only wind's hush and wolves' faint, distant chorus remained. She squeezed Jaime's hand, smiled, and spoke a vow softer than prayer, older than any charter or law. We will keep watch, she said, for winter is patient, but so are we. And in that stillness, beneath branches that remembered every oath ever carved into Heart Tree flesh, she felt the quiet certainty that when next long night stirred beyond horizon, the children of this land, children raised between ice and flame, stories and soil, would meet it not as scattered fear, but as one people bearing thousand banners, woven into single